When a plane spirals out of control in a freak storm, three friends must jump to save their lives.
Once that door was open, I just jumped.
Without knowing the fate of his friends, Will Slattery faces a terrifying ordeal. He battles strong currents, the threat of deadly sharks, and of being driven to the edge of insanity.
Death was imminent and very, very close. I first skydived in college. Contrary to what a lot of people perceive skydiving as, is a bunch of crazy testosteronic nutbags. You know, it's a very family-oriented sport. It's a beautiful bunch of folks who love the same thing, and floating through the sky, there's nothing quite like it.
Will Slattery and his two friends, Jimmy Simplicio and Manny Sanchez, are on a dream vacation, skydiving in Costa Rica.
Costa Rica is a great place to jump. The sky down there was absolutely gorgeous. It was blue, clear, beautiful. We were all jumping in shorts. It was just amazing, you know, really comfortable skydiving. Just a really good vibe down there. A perfect time away in this exotic tropical location. Jimmy was a really great coach, a really great teacher, a mentor to me. Manny was more of a friend. Manny actually used to wear this big jester's hat. It was quite funny.
Get drunk and do it again, you know?
I'm not gonna take my hat off. No.
Will and his buddies have traveled to Costa Rica from California, where they're all members of the same skydiving club.
Elsinore Skydiving School?
You knock yourself out.
Giles Fabris manages the club and checks in with the guys, even if they're thousands of miles away.
Elsinore Skydive Club, Giles Fabris.
About Skydive Elsinore was the family of skydivers that live and jump there. The best group of people anybody could possibly ever meet. Fantastic family atmosphere between the skydivers, it really is.
What will I mean with all this paperwork?
They were going down to Costa Rica to kick back, relax, do some jumps, enjoy the scenery, and generally just have a great vacation with a ton of skydiving in it.
Yeah, all right, you enjoy it. Cheers.
Hey, it doesn't get much better.
Good stuff.
Hey, listen, we're gonna chug a while.
We're gonna chug. Slide back.
Hey, Bill, please, he's gonna talk.
It's a clear blue skies.
And wind in
Clear
your
blue
hair.
skies.
Yeah, wind in your hair except for mine.
The next day, Will prepares for his final day's jumping. And as always, safety is the #1 concern.
You check your gear over and over again. I'm probably more anal, so to speak, about that than a lot of other people, but I tend to check my gear several times to make sure that everything's in order. I'm an adventurous person, but I'm in no way a cowboy. I'm not going to do something that's going to kill me. People will tell you I'm quite conservative. If you pay attention to what your gear is doing and where things are supposed to be and keep them where they're supposed to be, it can be a very, very safe sport.
Hey, Will, you almost ready, buddy?
Yeah, man.
All right.
The guys have delayed the day's jump until the afternoon. There's been a storm in the morning, but by lunchtime, the skies have cleared.
Cloud's gonna blow over.
It was sunny, you know, some white clouds, but nothing stormy. Minus the intermittent clouds, things that day looked like they would be just the same as the day before.
Hey, Bradley. What's up, buddy?
So we all started getting our rigs together and getting our gear on to get ready to go skydiving.
Yeah? Good to go.
Ready? Let's go, Jimmy, baby.
The plane we flew down there was a Cessna 206. It was a small airplane, smaller than probably most cars.
All right, my man.
Planes for skydiving are generally, they'll take out the seats. So it's basically an open compartment in the back, and we'll sit back to leg, you know, so kind of sit in a row so that we're packed in there nice and tight, you know.
Okay, blue skies, safe landing.
Fire up, baby.
Good group. Ready?
Yeah.
Nervous, man? You look nervous.
A little bit. Yeah, dude. All right.
The atmosphere on board is light-hearted.
I was there.
But as the plane climbs, the weather begins to close in.
Within 5 to 10 minutes after we took off, we actually entered the clouds. And from that point on, for probably 20 minutes, we were in complete whiteout, meaning all around the airplane was white. We couldn't see the land, we couldn't see the ocean, we couldn't see anything.
Pretty thick, huh? Freaky.
A little bit unnerving, you know.
Will and the guys hold tight, obeying the golden rule of skydiving.
Skydivers aren't supposed to fall through clouds. It's just a matter of safety because people can get disoriented.
Sorry, guys. I thought we might find a break.
We were expecting at some point to come out above the clouds, but we just never did.
With no break in the clouds in sight, the guys decide to turn back.
Okay, guys. It's too thick.
It's just not worth taking the risk.
We were a little disappointed, but we all skydive a lot, so it wasn't a big deal, you know, we'd get over it. We're used to clouds and, you know, you don't jump through clouds generally, so it was fine.
But as the plane turns and makes its way back to base, they hit serious trouble.
Within 20 seconds after we started going into minor turbulence,
God, I hate this car.
it just got worse and worse.
Okay.
Then the plane started going into massive turbulence. I was definitely not a happy camper, you know. I didn't want to be in a little tiny plane flying crazily all over the sky.
No.
Seconds later, the plane begins to lose control.
The plane was just going haywire. It even started to tilt. I was on the ceiling, I was on the floor, I was on the ceiling, I was on the floor. I was frightened. At that point, there wasn't much we could do except ride it out or jump out.
Get the lag.
With the plane now hurtling towards Earth, Will and his friends have no option but to take drastic emergency action.
And at that point, we all started going for the door, trying to get it up. It was the only thing we could do. It took us 4 tries to get the door open because we were being thrown about the airplane so much.
Despite not knowing how high they are and if they have enough time to parachute properly, they dive into the void.
Once that door was open, my butt was out of that airplane. I did not want to be there. I knew that. I trust my skydiving equipment. I trust my parachute, and I did not trust that airplane at that point. I just got out. 5 to 8 seconds later, my automatic parachute went off, which means I was going at a very fast velocity at about 700 feet. We were very low in very low cloud cover, and it was a shock to me. At that point, I looked around for my friends. I saw Jimmy under his canopy as well, going the other way quite a distance off, and Manny was under his canopy next to me, flying parallel to me.
Will is desperate to know that his old friend, Manny, is okay.
I kept calling out to him to try and get his attention so that we were coordinated on landing. But he never answered. He was just kind of limp, you know? His head was hanging down, and my assumption at that point was that he got hit by the airplane coming out. It occurred to me that he might be dead.
Just seconds after jumping, Will is now hurtling towards Earth at 40 miles an hour, with absolutely no idea where he might land.
The plane crashed in the water behind me, and I looked back and saw the tail of the plane sticking out of the water. I was in somewhat shock at that point.
Will has hit the ocean, still attached to his parachute rig, and he must act fast to avoid drowning.
If you land in water, you want to get your chest strap off so that you can take your gear off immediately and swim under the parachute. At that point, it was really about focus and trying to do the right thing, so if there's a chance of survival, that you survive. It took me 2 or 3 minutes, and that was a pretty scary feeling because you can actually get tangled up in the lines and drown.
On surfacing, Will's first thoughts of his friends. They've also dived out of the plane. One of them, Manny, seemed in serious trouble.
I removed my shirt and my shoes because I wanted to be able to freely swim over and find Manny. I felt the need to act fast because if Manny was unconscious, then it was important to get to him and keep his head out of the water.
Manny! Manny!
He wasn't answering me. I didn't see his parachute. I didn't see anything.
Manny! Is there anybody there? Don't worry.
So I swam around toward where I thought he would have landed. I didn't even see a lick of him.
With his friends gone, Will quickly has to face up to his complete isolation.
Hello?
I accepted the fact that I was alone in a pair of shorts in the middle of the ocean. There was nothing. The plane went under. I saw no parachutes, no Jimmy, no Manny, no nothing, except ocean.
Stranded miles out in the Pacific Ocean, Will is overcome with a feeling of complete hopelessness. And he can see no way out.
I couldn't see land. I saw no boats. I didn't think there was any way I was going to last overnight in the ocean. If I'm going to die, why couldn't I have just gone in with the plane instead of have to struggle out here until I drown? If there's a chance at life, I'll fight, you know? But if I'm going to die no matter what, why stretch it out, you know? Give me instant death.
Will knows he's landed in shark-infested waters.
Had remembered what I'd known about sharks being able to smell blood and realizing that I was vulnerable in the middle of the ocean. If they want you, they can find you from very far off.
But he begins to replace his fear of sharks for a feeling that they may actually offer him a quick way out.
You hungry?
I didn't want it to be some long, drawn-out process. Like, who wants a long, drawn-out death?
Come on!
Which is why I decided that being eaten would be a much better option.
Come on! You hungry? Ah! Come and get it, come on!
But the sharks don't come, and Will begins to take stock of his predicament.
If I'd been off the coast of the States, there would be Coast Guard and other boats looking for me within a short period of time, but this was a third world country. So I thought, you know, don't be a spoiled American and think there's going to be a boat coming to get you. You have to survive this or not.
Just enjoy the view.
Alone in the ocean, with night fast approaching, Will decides to fight back.
I started to have to make decisions about what exactly I was going to do. I had to do something. I didn't want to expend all my energy treading water when I knew that if I just laid back, I could float. The most important thing out there was retaining calm and not panicking, because panic I knew would kill me. Staying calm, and that required a faculty that was born anew in myself, that I think I've certainly never experienced before. There's something very pure about the action of trying to live and saying, whatever happens, happens, but I'm going to do my best to try.
The ground coordinator, Tanya Handel, is waiting for the guys to land at the agreed location.
My stomach started to turn when I arrived and there was no skydivers on our drop zone.
Even if they'd landed somewhere else, Milt Burton, the owner of the skydiving school, knows to call her.
Okay, guys, we're all good. Remember, Milt, call me when you land. Blue skies, safe landing. Milt, are you there? Over.
I immediately thought they must have canceled the dive and returned back to the airstrip.
Unable to raise Milt on her mobile phone, Tanya heads back to the airfield.
20 minutes later, there was nothing, no one to be seen at the airstrip.
Out in the ocean, Will has been struggling to stay afloat for 5 hours. His muscles are drawing on emergency reserves of adrenaline. He's beginning to suffer acute exhaustion, and he's in complete darkness.
I could scarcely see my hand in front of my face. It felt like I was in a dark, dark place, a dark world that was very isolating. I don't think that I've ever felt more vulnerable.
But as he drifts alone in the dark, Will suddenly gets his first ray of hope.
I saw 5 or 6 lights spaced out across the land. I had no idea how far they were. I knew they were lights and therefore human, and I was pretty convinced that was where the land was.
It's the glimmer of hope he's been waiting for, and Will makes for the shore.
I had to go slow, calm, collected, cool. I would do maybe 20 to 30 backstrokes and then stop. It was a great thing I knew where the land was.
Just as safety seems within reach, the undercurrents begin to pull him further out, back to the ocean, and back into the night.
I was exhausted. I was just exhausted. I saw no actual possibility of me getting out of the ocean alive.
Back at the airfield, Tanya is waiting for the plane to return to base. It's been missing for 6 hours, and there's been no sighting of the aircraft.
Tower, any sign of them yet? Over.
She needs to check the plane hasn't diverted to another airstrip before alerting the emergency services.
We were all just praying that they were sitting in some cantina with no cell service and alive. We were just praying that they were alive. We didn't care where, just that they were alive.
Alone in the ocean, his thoughts turn to the people he may never see again.
I thought about family, about friends, people back home, about Jimmy and Manny, certainly. I wondered how they were. Had they survived the initial landing in the ocean, getting out of the airplane, would they be able to survive the night?
Anybody there?
Ahora mismo. The weather's getting really bad.
On shore, Tanya now realizes that something has gone badly wrong. The skydiving plane has not returned and is missing.
Sí, tenemos que buscarlos. No, listen. Escucha. The plane has not landed.
She knows the plane must have crashed, but the Costa Rican emergency services can't launch a rescue during the night. Visibility is just too poor.
No, not tomorrow. Now, we have to go now.
Panic was going through my head.
I mean, they haven't called me. They always call me.
We didn't know where to even put our energy into looking. Where could they have gone? North, south, up the coast, down the coast, in the mountains, off the coast. We had no idea where to even start to look for them.
Out at sea, Will's been in the ocean for 9 hours. The water temperature has dropped to 45 degrees. He's rapidly losing body heat and dehydrating even further from the effects of swallowing seawater.
And as soon as it got to be night, the swells were getting bigger, it was colder, and I was getting more water in my mouth, which I knew eventually over time could be responsible for taking my life.
No search has been mounted, and he's fast running out of hope.
I saw no boats. It was dark. I didn't think there was any way I was going to last overnight in the ocean. No boats, no planes. I'm dead, man. I don't think that I've ever felt more vulnerable. My life, my essence of actually the physical life anyway, was teetering on an edge.
Just when it seems things can get no worse, Will comes under attack from beneath the water.
I realized that I was in a school of jellyfish, and they were stinging me all over my back.
Jellyfish tentacles contain thousands of tiny needle-like filaments that deliver small doses of venom just below the skin.
The pain was excruciating. It was all over my back, my legs, my feet, everywhere. It was extremely painful.
The jellyfish is stinging Will's skin, leaving welts and bleeding sores. The salt water stings him relentlessly.
It was excruciatingly painful. I was crying. I mean, it hurt so badly.
Will desperately tries to escape the jellyfish.
I swam faster to swim out of the school.
But he just keeps swimming into yet another school.
I was, taken aback by the amount of times I was stung by the jellyfish. My God, how much worse can this get?
Come on!
It was excruciating.
The relentless stinging causes Will's mind to wander. What else is in the water, waiting to attack him?
Sharks hunt at night, and do I splash around until a shark comes and eats me? It seemed a horror. It seemed...
And then his worst fears become real. There is something in the water, and it's heading straight for him.
I saw something floating in the water. And be it shock, I don't know, but I thought, oh, it's crocodile.
As it moves closer, Will is about to find out if a deadly nighttime predator is about to get him.
I thought, oh, great, I'll get eaten and drowned at the same time. I had no idea how far out saltwater crocodiles would swim, and this was too elongated to be a turtle. So I thought, oh, it's crocodile. I laughed, because who would think a log, a tree, is in the middle of the ocean? I was amazed.
After 10 hours in the water, the floating log is a lifeline for Will. His first lucky break since his ordeal began.
I put my arms over it and I floated with it, and was much more thankful to have something to float on rather than just my belly. It gave me a lot of hope that I didn't have before, maybe some chance that this was going to end positively.
News of the accident reaches Will's skydiving club in California.
Giles Fabris here from the club. I know it's late.
His friends fear the worst.
Will's plane's gone missing in Costa Rica.
The first thing I did was the difficult task of contacting relatives and loved ones of the missing. That was one of the most difficult tasks I think I've ever had to do.
Even though they're 3,000 miles away, they do all they can to help.
Your friends have crashed in a plane, it's in a foreign country. The first thing you do is to try and collect as much information on what's actually happening. I had an image of my friends being in the water and their life slipping away in the darkness. That was a very difficult thing to have to think about.
Call me the moment you learn anything.
Then they hear that the air-sea rescue operation won't start until daylight.
I don't think anyone's organising a search of the coastline, so we're going to do it, okay?
From their base in California, they try to do all they can to help.
Get in touch with as many boat captains as possible, okay?
We decided that we would start calling fishing boats, calling charter boats in Costa Rica, and to ask them whether they would send their boats out to look for our friends.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
At least I got one boat out.
Will has survived 12 hours adrift in the ocean. He's clinging onto the log for his life, but prolonged exposure to salt water means his muscles are beginning to shrink, and he's suffering extreme fatigue.
The log was giving me something to float on, but I was exhausted. I was just exhausted. I was certain, because of the amount of water I'd ingested, the amount of pain I was in from the jellyfish, and the fact that it had gotten much colder that I was going to die.
"15 hours after crash landing in the ocean, Will has made it through the night.
I did fall asleep on the log. I only know because I woke up on the log. I have no idea when I actually fell asleep. I'm sure it was just through pure exhaustion.
Morning brings with it a tantalizing sight.
It was daylight and I could see the beach. And it seemed like the swells were pushing me toward land almost, and I could maybe, halfway surf the log into the shore, I knew that if I landed right at the right place, there would be a bar right there. I could pull up, I could grab a beer, I could call for a ride, There was a lot of hope at sunrise, my personal sunrise.
It was a long night. We were pulling data from the internet, we were calling the State Department, we were getting very varied sources back. Even when you have news reports that tell you that the chance of survival is very, very small, there's always a little bit of hope.
Hello?
And it's very important that that hope doesn't die. It's a frustrating feeling knowing that people you love are in a situation and you're many miles away trying to do the best you can.
Yeah, that's what we thought. It's raining.
When your energy's focused on the well-being of your friends, the hours and the minutes tend to disappear. Time becomes kind of distorted. Everything takes on a rather unworldly feel about it. Becomes a very surreal nightmare.
Will rides the ingoing tides for over an hour.
I wasn't making as much progress as I needed to.
But the tide turns, and the undercurrents begin to work against Will, pushing him back out to sea.
I didn't feel visually like I was closer to the beach.
His only hope is the Costa Rican rescue operation, which is now underway. But the currents have taken him miles from where he crash landed. And the rescue teams are looking in the wrong place. Even if they knew where he was, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack.
Throughout that day, boats and planes and helicopters would just pass, probably just doing their own thing and not looking for me. But it didn't make sense not to wave to it, so I waved a couple times, and then the log would roll over and I'd fall in the ocean. And that was a scene repeated over and over throughout that day. To have other human beings virtually so close, yet literally so far away, both gave me hope and was disheartening at the same time.
Hello!
I realized how insignificantly, physically, visually small I was in the ocean and how virtually impossible it was going to be for any of them to see me.
Hey! Oh, man!
In California, his skydiving friends know that if Will is alive, his chances of survival are now extremely thin.
James, anything?
No. Getting nothing online.
Come on, someone's got to know something somewhere.
Okay, we'll keep going.
Even in Costa Rica, the ocean is cold. The ocean is pulling energy from anybody or anything that is floating in it.
A few boats down that way.
Let me see if I can find what I can online. Get you.
As time goes on, the chances of somebody surviving dramatically decrease.
It's a pretty big chunk of ocean, so our best chance is still the boats. Fingers crossed, yeah, let's keep hassling them.
Since the log was the only thing floating, I wanted to keep it with me. So I would try various techniques of pushing it forward and then swimming along to it and then pushing it forward.
But despite his efforts, Will knows he's still getting no closer to shore.
Initially in the morning when I woke up, I thought by noon I would be on the beach. And later it didn't quite seem that anymore.
Clinging to the log for 13 hours, Will realizes his last remaining lifeline is fast becoming a burden. Instead of pushing him towards land, it's riding the undercurrents and pulling him even further out to sea.
I thought that pulling and pushing the log along was really not increasing my progress. It was giving me something to float on, but it wasn't really getting me toward the shore.
The log that so far saved his life could also end up killing him.
It was the only floating thing I had besides myself. I mean, I'd slept on it. That tree saved my life.
He faces an agonizing dilemma. Should he let the log go and hope he has the energy to reach shore? Or should he hang on, praying for rescue?
I ultimately decided that the tree was keeping me in the same place, that I wasn't making as much progress as I could were I just swimming with my body. It was extremely difficult to let it go. I swam maybe 20, 30 yards away, and then I said, forget this, and I swam back to the tree and was very glad to have it back. To let it go was tantamount to saying goodbye to the one floating thing I had besides myself. You know, it seemed like it could be a very foolish thing to do, to let it go.
You're never gonna make it. Let it go. Just gonna let it go. Come on.
Will's hopes that the log will push him to shore are crushed. Even though he's totally exhausted, he knows he must let it go.
The third time I let it go, I just watched it go over the swells and go away from me.
Having let the log go, and with nothing to float on, Will's energy quickly runs out. He swallowed a dangerous amount of seawater and is now suffering from extreme dehydration.
The biggest threat at that point was my lack of ability to breathe any longer. I was very short-breathed, just and I knew that I could not last very long like that.
The effect of dehydration means Will's blood pressure is rapidly increasing. His pulse is racing, causing severe heart palpitations. If his body loses any more fluid, he could slip into unconsciousness and even die.
I'd taken on more and more and more seawater the whole time, which definitely exacerbated the effects of dehydration, as did the sun coming out, as did simply not having water.
Jesus.
I was thinking that within the next few minutes I was going to drown.
"3,000 miles away, Will's friends are desperate to find him.
I really wanted to know any piece of information that might give us an advantage in helping our friends. We found basic maps of Costa Rica and we looked at the weather data, and there'd been a large storm in the area. So it really told us that if the plane had crashed in turbulent weather, it had crashed in the ocean.
Now, we reckon with the way the current's going, they may even be further down the coast. We've got boats coming out here, and here.
So far, none of the boat owners they'd contacted has spotted Will. And after nearly 24 hours in the sea, he's running out of time.
When the sun came out, dehydration really set in, and I started hallucinating pretty heavily. I noticed a severe deterioration in my mental state to comprehend reality versus fantasy.
Will has swallowed so much seawater, his kidneys can't flush out the excess salt. His body is gradually shutting down, bringing on hallucinations.
I would think I saw a shark fin over here, and I would look over there and, and think I saw something else over there, and I knew that there were turtles there that can just slice you open and eat you, So those things were seeping in.
Will's ordeal has driven him to the edge of insanity, and his body is ready to give up the fight.
I just felt at that point that I had very little physical and mental energy to keep my head above the water. I had been in excruciating pain from the jellyfish. The swells had picked up. There was more and more water getting inside me. And I just felt at that point like the end was imminent, like it would be a very few minutes off.
He begins to say goodbye to the family and friends he thinks he will never see again.
I felt alone from other humans. I felt that I'd left, the other humans, the other people in my life behind. That part of my existence was over, and that I was going to die, and that I hoped that I'd done well in life, that I'd shown compassion and kindness to people, and that they felt that love, They say that your life flashes before your eyes when you're about to die, and very similar to the night before, I thought that death was imminent and very, very close. I felt that I'd left the other people in my life behind, that part of my existence was over, and that within a very few minutes I would be dead. I went vertical and I thought I saw a boat, but I was by no way sure. My mind was not together any longer. I was hallucinating heavily at that point. Either a boat was there or there wasn't.
Focus well. Focus well. Focus. Breathe. Hello?
I waved to them and yelled in Spanish as loud as I could.
Hello? Hello?
For them to have seen me was unlikely, so I laid back down in the water to await either drowning or rescue.
Having used up his last scrap of energy to wave at the boat, Will collapses in the water and awaits his fate.
I looked up and saw them, and I couldn't believe it at first.
Will has drifted miles from the search area, and by complete chance, he's finally spotted by passing fishermen. He's so close to giving up, his rescues come in the nick of time.
They said, "Come on, get on the boat." And I said, "I can't." I had no strength, And they all reached down, and it was just, I think, as much in shock as I was when the plane crashed.
Oh my God.
I just couldn't believe it, you know. It crashed in the middle of the ocean, and my fat, pasty butt made it through 24 hours in the ocean.
When I found out Will was alive, that brought a lot of joy.
Hey, guys, come here. It's him, look. It's Will. He made it.
Wow, yeah. Come on. See?
How did you do that? Oh, look.
He didn't just survive the crash, he survived the crash and he survived the bloody ocean.
I just literally said, oh my God, I'm invincible. And I collapsed onto the boat and held onto this guy's leg until we got to shore. Unfortunately, the search and rescue operation was looking in the wrong places. There were some Costa Ricans that were looking in the mountains. Others were looking in different parts of the ocean. So when they found me, they had a better idea of where my friends were going to be.
A report was made that there were more survivors found. As it turned out, that was misinterpreted information on the radio, and that there were no survivors found.
Over the next few days, the bodies and plane wreckage are pulled from the ocean. Will's friends, Manny Sanchez and Jimmy Simplicio, along with the pilot and remaining passengers, all perished in the crash. Will is confirmed as the only survivor.
Manny was this amazing, almost cartoonish, almost childlike, beautiful human being. And Jimmy really is the same, an enigmatic, amazing character, you know? Kind of a hard ass, but a really beautiful soul at the same time. Did we do the right thing by jumping out? You know, I mean, I did the right thing. Manny and Jimmy did the same thing as I did. We all made the same decision, so I'm comfortable with the decision we made.
After his 24-hour ordeal, Will spent 5 days recovering in hospital. He's still skydiving.
I love skydiving. I've done probably 2,000 jumps since the accident. The airplane was the dangerous thing there. My parachute saved my life.
An amateur treasure hunter's first holiday after life-saving heart surgery becomes a living nightmare when he gets lost in the Australian wilderness.
They're not going to find me. You idiot! I was finished.
He's at the mercy of a hostile environment, deadly predators, and his own mind.
I was actually wishing I'd died.
Without food, water, or his vital medication, he edges closer to death with every step. Theo Rosmulder is on a long-awaited gold prospecting holiday in a remote part of Western Australia with his wife, Pauline.
Hi, love. Can I get you anything?
No, thanks, love.
Feeling lucky?
Yeah. Today might be the day.
You had your pills?
Yeah. Had him earlier. See you, love.
The treasure-hunting trip is a reward for Theo, who's recovering from triple bypass heart surgery. To survive, he needs daily medication to regulate his heartbeat, and Pauline has come along to keep an eye on him.
I don't enjoy the same enthusiasm of gold detective as Theo does, but I do go, as your good wife does. It was an eye-opener to me as to how remote and desolate Western Australian bush is. Once you'd lost sight of that caravan, you didn't go any further. You turned and came back because, I mean, you got turned around and I was lost. You know, it was very, very easy to get lost.
The Australian outback is one of the world's most sparsely populated regions. Apart from a small Aboriginal settlement about 6 miles from Theo's camp, the area is completely uninhabited.
You can drive for 8 hours constantly and not come across a soul. Wouldn't pass a farmhouse. About the only thing you'd lucky to see would be maybe some wild camels, not a donkey, and basically dirt, trees and nothing else.
The outback is also home to dangerous wild dogs, or dingoes. Opportunistic predators that eat everything, from lizards to kangaroos. And sometimes, even people. Theo and his 2 friends, Doug and Brian, focus their search on a remote region peppered with old mines from the 1900s gold rush. After 2 weeks gold hunting, they feel they know the area so well.
We really need this today?
They leave their handheld GPS in the back of their vehicle.
Back here, 5:30 then?
Yeah.
Be lucky, boys.
To be honest, if I look back, I was getting pretty cocky. I'd been out so many times by myself and thought I knew the area like the back of my hand.
The men will guide themselves back to their vehicle using the sun, as the outback has few features to navigate by.
We're only going to go out for an hour or so at the most. We decided we weren't going to walk around any great distance. Gold fever.
Lovely.
They talk about gold fever, yeah, that's basically it. If you don't find it, it's the thought of actually finding one. And when you do, you want to find another one.
With one shiny nugget in his pocket, his prospects look good. But Theo's thirst for gold gets the better of him. And his intensive search takes him much further than he realizes.
You get that engrossed in what you're doing, you don't check to see how far you've got. When you turn around, you think to yourself, my God, have I come this far?
While Brian and Doug return safely, Theo's not only late, but he's lost his only way of finding their vehicle. Heavy clouds have rolled in, presenting him with a serious problem.
I looked up at the sky and there was no sun to speak of because of the cloud cover, and the cloud cover was exceptionally thick. I realised that, this is getting serious.
Theo had planned to retrace his steps to the vehicle using the sun. Without it, or his GPS, he has absolutely no way of navigating.
I basically couldn't quite work out as to which direction to actually go back to the car. And I was getting pretty dejected. So I took an uneducated guess.
Theo has made an error that could cost him his life. Instead of trying to find his way back, he should have followed the golden rule of the outback. If you get lost, stay put and wait for rescue.
He's taking his time.
It's now half an hour past their rendezvous time. Theo's friends Brian and Doug start to wonder where he is.
I got myself totally disorientated to the point that I didn't know where left, right, up, down, north, east, west was. I looked around and I thought, I've been here before. You know, this area looks so familiar. But I realised that it didn't matter where I was. It all looked familiar.
Theo was in one of the world's harshest environments. A vast and featureless desert, devoid of food and water. Without a compass, and with light fading, Theo is totally lost.
How the hell am I going to get out of this? It was getting just on dusk. I knew by then that I'd be spending a night out in the open if I didn't find my way home.
Then, in the last minutes of daylight, he stumbles on a fence, a lifeline in the middle of nowhere.
We were told that if you find a track or a fence line, if you follow it, it'll take you back to the Aboriginal community. I've got to try and work out from here which way to go.
Theo's decision may mean the difference between life and death. One way will lead him to the Aboriginal settlement and safety, but the other will take him deeper into hostile wilderness, miles from help, food, or water. Lost and alone, Theo has to make a stark choice. Left or right? With night falling fast, Theo decides to take a chance.
When you're looking at a cold night, if there's an opportunity to get back to camp, you tend to grab it. I take tablets for the heart operation that I had, and I wanted to get back to make sure I took those.
You had your pills?
Had them earlier.
Theo's medication is essential to maintain a steady heartbeat. But he left his pills in camp. Missing doses can send his heart out of control and put his life in immediate danger. Back at camp, Pauline is increasingly worried.
He can nearly talk himself into palpitations if he doesn't have his tablets.
The heart wasn't doing that great. I could hear it just thumping in my head, and the more I walked, the worse it got.
Theo has bet his life on the direction he's chosen to lead him to safety. He's still ignoring the rule of the outback, to stay where he is once lost.
I took off, followed the track, did that for probably an hour.
But his gamble is about to fail.
When the track ran out, I thought to myself, well, that'd be right. The only track I picked to follow, and it's the only one that ran out.
Theo has walked miles in the wrong direction. Instead of the safety of the Aboriginal community, he's ended up deep in the desert.
That's about how good my luck was going.
Hello, Theo. Pauline here.
Yeah, Pauline, we're just packing up, and, Theo's not back yet.
You what?
By this stage, it's dark. Really was cold. We found our way out there to where they were.
Theo's wife raises the alarm, but a full search can't begin until daylight. Without his medication, that could be too late. But it's not the only danger Theo faces. Temperatures in the outback can plunge below freezing in winter. He's only wearing thin cotton clothing and is at real risk of hypothermia.
Wouldn't you just know it?
At night time it gets very cold. Once the sun went down, you lost all heat. You think to yourself, well, okay, I've got to find somewhere to huddle into that gets me out of the weather somewhere.
Theo faces another crucial decision.
Do I tread back, follow the track all the way back, or do I try and find some place to camp for the night? I decided to look for an outcrop with a hollow in it where, you know, the kangaroos sleep.
Theo abandons the fence, knowing that he risks not finding it again. Instead, he searches for a rocky outcrop and possible shelter. But it could spell danger.
I was a bit dubious when I first got there. Don't know what's in here. You know, if I come across a kangaroo, that's fine. They'll just jump off and be more frightened than I would be. I don't want anything to do with dingoes.
Dingoes often sleep in kangaroo hollows and will attack if disturbed.
I went with my pick out front. If I disturb them, they might get nasty.
He has no option but to cautiously enter the shelter. If he stays out in the open, he's likely to freeze to death. The cave is empty, providing shelter, but little comfort.
The fact that I was only wearing a cotton shirt, jeans, I was just freezing cold.
We just kept looking and looking and looking and beeping the horn, and I stood up and just yelled and yelled and yelled. And then we thought, well, this is getting really serious.
As night draws in, there's still no sign of Theo. So Pauline and Brian turn for help to the people who know every inch of this terrain, the local Aborigines.
Can I help you?
Yeah, we've lost a fellow of ours about 8 k's up the track.
Does he have any water on him?
No.
Derek, go and get some of the boys.
Unaware that a search effort is underway, Theo faces a long, cold night alone.
Here I was huddled into this outcrop of rock, which was only covering probably 2/3 of my body. I heard a motorbike, and I sat up and looked out to where the noise was, and I could see somebody. I started running towards the headlights and waving and yelling and screaming. The motorbike was too loud and they couldn't hear any yells or anything that was going on, and they just kept going, and I lost sight of them. I just couldn't believe it. That's when I knew I was going to be spending the night out in the open. That's when I knew I was in trouble.
Theo knows what a night exposed to the outback will bring.
Bloody idiots.
I thought, this is it.
Theo has survived an ice-cold night. Although he missed a chance of rescue, he knows people are trying to find him. Daylight brings fresh hope.
They've got the people out in the ground looking. So, you know, I've got to be found. Everybody's out looking for me.
But help must come soon. Not only is Theo without vital heart pills, but as the daytime temperatures rise, so does the threat of dehydration.
I could see a fairly large outcrop of rock, and I thought, well, that's the place I need to be. If they're going to find me, they'll come and look at that place.
Theo's gone a full day without vital medication. But now, a search and rescue operation is underway.
Pauline, rescue plane will be here in an hour.
When they said the aeroplane was coming, that was when I thought, he's fine. You know, the aeroplane will find him. I mean, you see all these search and rescue things where the aeroplane finds people.
Guys, wait a sec. Can you take these, please?
What are they?
There is heart pills. He needs them. He really needs them.
Without those, the heart goes into spasm and have another heart attack.
With police and volunteers helping, the Aborigines can now share their renowned tracking skills. But finding one person in such a vast terrain is like finding a needle in a haystack. Theo has had neither food or water and gone 24 hours without vital medication that regulates his heartbeat. His chances of dying are increasing with every hour.
I know my energy levels were dropping dramatically because I had no fat to burn whatsoever. I mean, I've only been out of hospital for 12 months. Finally got to the outcrop of rock.
Camouflaged against the scrub in his pale clothes, Theo's best chance of being seen is to find high ground.
I heard an engine going. And saw a plane flying around, and I realised that everybody's out looking for me.
Hey! Here! Yo! Oh, you beauty. Hey. Theo.
A spotter plane is heading straight for Theo. He's certain rescue is just moments away.
I figured from what I've seen on TV, if he saw me, he'd sit there and he'd make the winds go side by side. Figure, oh, well, I'll look for that if that's the case. Didn't see me. I just thought, oh, well, they'll see me the second time. The second time he flew over, I was waving and yelling and whatnot.
Come on, boy! Come on! Hey! Hey! Idiot! Buddy.
Despite flying directly overhead, the pilot failed to spot Theo against the scrub. It's a crushing blow. There are dozens of people looking for him, but he's never felt so alone.
Well, I called him every name under the sun. Yelled, screamed, threw rocks at him. Just couldn't believe that here I was out in the middle of nowhere, sitting on an outcrop of rock, and he couldn't see me.
Theo's situation suddenly worsens. Now, his body, weakened by his recent heart surgery, reacts to the frustration and physical strain of his ordeal. Just a year earlier, Theo's operation involved removing veins from his legs and grafting them onto his heart to pump blood more effectively. Medication regulates the blood flow, but without it, Theo's heartbeat can swing wildly out of control. He's at critical risk of heart failure.
I had visions of, grafts being blown off.
Theo Rossmulder has been lost in the outback for more than 24 hours. Rescue planes have failed to spot him, and lacking vital medication, his heartbeat is now dangerously irregular.
The heart was going haywire, and I have to wait for it to calm down. I just hope the old ticker holds up, because the way it's thumping and bumping, it's not doing real well. With my battery on the detector, I knew it still had a bit of power in it. And I thought, well, if I could get the battery apart and wire up the batteries to actually spark. And have some bark there where I could actually try and get it going. Wired it all up so that they spark when I put the two wires together. I might be able to get a fire going.
Planes have been flying overhead every hour, but so far failed to spot him. building a fire might be his only hope of being seen.
Come on, mate.
I'd put a lot of effort, probably most of Sunday afternoon, and I was putting all my hopes into that. The stuff that I wanted to light just didn't come to life, just didn't happen. I was totally disgusted that I'd wasted a good battery on an effort that didn't work.
As the second night falls, his chances of survival are fading fast. He again ignores the rules to stay in one place and continues to wander in the hope of finding the fence. But the more he walks, the more disoriented he starts to become.
I didn't have any actual sense of which way I was actually going to. I was walking away from where I was lost and not staying in the same area.
Alongside Theo's heart defect, 48 hours without water is now becoming life-threatening. A healthy person could go 3 days without it, but Theo is not healthy, and he hasn't had a drop to drink in 2 days. Severe dehydration pushes him closer to death with every hour.
When the body starts shutting down, it's not pleasant. Every part of your body hurts. You can't sit down without the part that you're leaning on. It just aches. When you start walking, your legs hurt, your arms hurt. It had gone from being saved and rescued to trying to survive, and the idea that there's a possibility you were going to die. I was getting so weak and thirsty. My throat was constantly dry, my lips were starting to get swollen. I had nothing to drink, there was just no water about whatsoever.
Theo's body is losing 2 to 3 litres of fluid per day, causing muscle cramps, headaches, and extreme disorientation. Desperate for fluid, he makes an uncomfortable decision.
And it all of a sudden dawned on me, hang on a minute, you can't waste this. This is your body fluid's going to waste. This is the stuff that's going to keep you alive. It's the only bit of moisture you've got. You know, this was pure water going through. When you decide that that's what you've got to do to survive, that first mouthful's bloody terrible. The first time it near made me sick. I'm thinking to myself, well, you know, I've come down a few pegs on the ladder, having to do that.
Each time Theo drinks his urine, it becomes more concentrated and less hydrating.
The more times you put it through the system, the stronger it becomes, which in turn makes it taste even worse. I couldn't drink it. It was just too vile. I was just withering away, and it was just an ordeal. It's like trying to run a car on an empty fuel tank.
Some 70 rescuers are combing the landscape, trying to find Theo before it's too late. Based on where he was last seen, the police have defined the search area, but Theo keeps wandering in and out of it.
I was starting to lose hope, I think. They would come back and, I'm sorry, Pauline, I haven't found him.
And as ongoing air searches fail to spot him, Theo too is losing hope.
By the time he was flying over me 14 times, I'd given up. I basically knew he wouldn't see me.
Theo faces a third night lost in the outback. Lacking both food and water, his energy is rapidly draining away.
It was just lonely, cold, and then all sorts of things go through your mind because you've got nothing else to do but think. And yeah, and it wasn't pleasant. I just, you just don't want to go there. It's, yeah, it was just terrible.
Suddenly, he hears the terrifying sound of a deadly new threat.
The dingoes and the wild dogs were watching me constantly. You really start to think, well, I'm not going to get out of this.
The Aborigine trackers have been searching for Theo around the clock.
Have a look at this.
They finally make a breakthrough and find one of his prints.
Yeah. And he's got company.
But they've also spotted another print alongside Theo's. The paw prints of a predator, the dingo.
Can I speak to you, missus?
Yeah, sure.
He's still alive.
How do you know?
We've seen his footprints. The dingoes are pulling him. They'll keep pulling him, missus.
Why?
In case he falls.
They were saying while an animal is still fit and healthy, a dingo won't follow. It will come look and then it'll go away. But once an animal is very poorly, they just keep their distance and track it until it falls.
Theo summons his last ounce of energy to keep moving.
As long as you're moving, they're not even going to come anywhere near you, but as soon as you fall down, they're in for the kill.
But as he continues to walk in and out of the search area, it hampers the rescuers' efforts to find him. Theo's mental reasoning has now become so clouded that he clings onto his expensive metal detector, but drops his pick, his only defense against the dingoes.
I basically left the only decent weapon that I had against them laying back in the dirt. I thought to myself, well, I'm going to be dead within 24 hours.
And as his energy levels hit rock bottom, Theo was also losing his mind.
I was hallucinating. I knew I was seeing things.
Feeling lucky?
Today might be the day.
Theo's physical and mental decline means he had little energy to walk. His fourth night exposed to the freezing cold could be his last, as he risks dying of hypothermia.
It got very wild, very cold, very windy. So I basically just sat on my backside and shivered all night. You were shivering all the time, you were cold, you couldn't lay down, you were aching all the time. All you're waiting for is the sun to come up so you can just start getting warm again. I was in so much pain that it was starting to get unbearable. Stomach cramps. I was starting to think I wasn't going to survive. So thoughts of the wife, kids, friends were certainly coming into your mind. I was thinking I was going to die, so I might as well write notes to everybody on the back of this oxidised piece of tin, which I did. This is my last message. Haven't got any energy left, and just carried on from there. I love you all. Trying to explain more so to my wife that it was my fault that I was there. Because I told her I was bloody stupid. Yeah, and it shouldn't have happened. Religion becomes very, very strong.
Dear God, can you help us out, mate? If you see me out of this, I'll see you right, I promise.
Hi, love. It's Mum. There's something I need to tell you. It's your dad.
Theo's wife, Pauline, has been waiting on tenterhooks for news. Until now, she's resisted phoning their 3 grown sons to tell them their father's missing.
He went detecting with Brian and Doug, and he didn't come back.
Don't worry, I said, as soon as the moon comes out tonight, he'll find his way back, honey. It's okay. I said, you know, it's okay, Mum. He will be found, it's okay. And I'm crying and crying. And I didn't tell them that how vast an area we were in. And I mean, you could not imagine it.
Your dad's a fighter, isn't he?
By Monday, I think I had him as dead. I really did. I couldn't think that someone of his weight and health could live that long without food, water and his medication. I really didn't.
5 days lost in the outback, without food, water or a single dose of essential heart medication, have pushed gold hunter Theo Rosmulder to death's door.
There was nothing left in the tank. I was finished. I was actually wishing I'd die.
Theo is no longer looking for shelter. He's seeking protection for his corpse. He doesn't want his body to be eaten by dingoes.
If you're in a situation where you don't have any choices, bar one is how you're going to die, you start to think that, well, let's make it as best as possible. When I found that cave, I basically decided, well, that would be a good resting place. What I'd planned on doing was basically crawling into the hole and bricking the front of it up. You know, I just didn't want to be a dog's dinner, basically. I was prepared to die. I knew I didn't have much time left. I heard a motorbike going off in the distance, and I looked over, and I could see this motorbike, and I thought, "Oh, you're seeing things." I thought, "No, you're going crazy." You know, it's not there. You know, you've seen things before, and that's just not there. But I kept watching it. I was looking at something that I couldn't see, but it was there, and it pulled up. It wasn't right there in front of me. I either sit here and hope that he drives up close, or I start walking, like I've been doing for the whole week. It hadn't done me any good, but by God, I could walk. I started waving, but I mean, it was taking such an effort to even stand up and wave.
On the verge of death, Theo has narrowly missed another rescue opportunity.
I'm going to turn around and go back. That was it. If I was going to die, that was the place I was going to die. I'd picked it. As soon as I could see them, that they knew where I was, I basically just collapsed on the ground. It was just a feeling of utter enjoyment. The emotions were going through that, you know, it's finished. That the thought of dying's not going to happen. All the plans that I had of, you know, going into the cave and letting nature take its course just wasn't going to happen. And, you know, those guys, they're the best looking bunch of blokes I'd ever seen.
Rescuers found a fresh set of Theo's prints, and the Aborigines were finally able to track him down.
Can't explain it. It was just a huge relief. It was, oh, thank God.
After 5 days in the outback, Theo Rosmulders suffered from severe dehydration and lost some 35 pounds. Yet his heart survived the ordeal without major complications. He now knows that had he stayed put on day one, he would likely have been found within hours.
I thank everybody involved for the effort they put in. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here. And like I've been telling people the whole way through, if you get lost, stay put. I mean, once you move away from where you're actually lost, you are lost. And it could cost you your life.
A plane carrying ecologists over the heart of Africa suddenly goes out of control.
I had 15 seconds to say I had a good life.
It crashes, leaving 3 men with serious life-threatening injuries. Exposed to the harshest of elements, with little hope of rescue, their only chance of survival is for one of them to walk for help.
I don't want to die.
If he didn't get through, we were all going to die.
At the mercy of the same animals they're trying to save.
I really felt that this was it.
How long can they survive in such a hostile environment?
Can you hear me?
It's early in the morning, and a group of ecologists are about to go on a special charter flight. They'll be flying into one of the remotest parts of Central Africa, the Luano Valley in Zambia. Graham Child from Zimbabwe is leading the team.
I've worked all over the world, but my real love is the central part of Africa. You have fantastic wildlife.
Clive English has flown over from the UK, especially to work with Graham.
The chance to do this work with somebody like Graham was just a real opportunity that nobody would ever turn down.
Come on, the weather's perfect.
Tower, this is Romeo Delta.
That's great. Lovely morning, sun in our eyes, and we're off.
The team has hired pilot Adam Pope, who knows the region well.
It is very spectacular. It's very remote and kind of pristine wilderness. Everyone was quite buzzed up. I don't think Mumba was quite so keen. He'd never flown an airplane before.
Zambian Mumba Chikungu is here to provide the men with local knowledge.
You okay? Yes.
The men are planning to establish a conservation park in the area. And the aim of this morning is to spot large herds of buffalo.
As we flew around, we saw about 6 or 7 elephants.
We were really looking for buffalo. They are usually quite plentiful, but I wasn't finding them.
Okay, take me down. Let's have a look down there.
He said, let's go in and see what we can find.
They're flying towards a wetland area where buffalo might gather. But this means flying in close to a huge escarpment rock face.
We had to get in quite close to this escarpment to be able to have a look at them properly. We were traveling quite fast.
Hold on.
The closer they get to the escarpment, the more turbulent the air becomes.
I noticed that the airplane seemed to be descending.
Then suddenly, the air sucks the plane downwards.
You get these vortexes that come off the ridge, and we'd flown into one of those.
At full throttle, Adam attempts to pull the plane up over the oncoming escarpment to escape the vortex.
I was trying to keep the airplane going at maximum revs to keep the nose up. The stall warning came on. This is bad news. I know this is really bad news. we were in serious trouble.
It seemed like we were not going to get over the top.
Just seconds before impact, Adam manages to bank the plane.
I managed to get the wings level, but we were going down.
Going in! We're going in!
What happened is that we just lost it.
Going in! We're going in! Brace! Brace!
I had about 10 or 15 seconds to say I had a good life.
Brace!
And then we hit.
The plane is shattered on impact. All 4 men are trapped inside the fuselage.
I woke up, and the first thing I knew one had to do with these situations is get out of the aeroplane.
Get out! Get out!
I wasn't really aware of where I was. I must have been somehow aware that the right way out was on my right.
Pilot Adam struggles to free himself from the wreckage. He's in for a shock.
I landed on the wing, but then, there was this huge pain. Shoots through your whole body like an electric shock. And I immediately knew I'd broken my back.
Adam has escaped the burning fuselage, but he's now helpless on the wing, where the fuel for the plane is stored.
Fire!
As fuel leaks closer to the flames,
we still had a significant amount of fuel on board, and I was lying on it.
The smallest drop could ignite the fuel tank, turning the plane and all 4 men into a fireball.
Fire! Get out! Get out!
Mumba scrambles clear, but Clive is still inside the wreckage.
I remember waking up. First thing I saw was Adam lying on the wing. I smelled aviation fuel. I thought I had to get out of here.
Get out! Get out now!
It was hot and it was horrible, and there was just carnage everywhere. There was a very steep slope, and I just rolled down the hill.
The plane is a ticking time bomb, ready to explode with Adam stuck on the wing.
I was scared. I thought, this is not good.
There was flame coming out of the engine. There was a fair amount of fuel leaking from the wing.
Fuel is very, very explosive stuff, and the slightest spark or flame, the whole thing fireballs. The slightest contact and the whole thing will blow. And there was nothing I could do about it.
Miraculously, the fire burns out. The most immediate danger is over.
Clive!
But like Adam, Clive is seriously injured and unable to move.
I just had this terrible pain as if someone had stuck something into my back. I was just writhing on the ground looking for a position that would give me some relief.
On impact, Clive's spine was twisted backwards and his vertebrae crushed together. Despite fracturing his back, he's managed to roll 70 feet away from the plane.
I felt a little bit guilty that somehow I'd panicked because of fear of explosion and just tried to run away from that as fast as I could.
Adam!
Clive has no idea if his colleagues have survived.
I could see the plane, but I couldn't really see any detail. I couldn't see Adam. I could just see the plane from where I was lying.
Adam! Clive! Adam, are you okay? I'm on the wing!
I kept calling to Adam, who just kept asking me if I was all right, and I said, yeah, I'm okay.
So I knew that Clive was alive, but in serious pain.
While Adam and Clive are both injured, Mumba is lucky enough to have survived relatively unscathed. But Graham is still missing.
I couldn't see or hear anything from Graham at all.
Graham!
And I thought he was dead.
Can you hear me?
I mean, I really did think he was dead.
I check on Graham. Mumba, is he okay? Mumba, is he okay?
Graham has taken the full impact of the crash.
Is he okay?
It's his foot. His foot is hanging off.
But he's alive?
Yes, he's breathing.
So that was a huge relief.
Graham is the most severely injured of them all. In shock, he doesn't grasp the full horror of what has happened.
I knew my back was damaged and I knew my feet were damaged, but I didn't realize how bad.
Adrenaline is numbing Graham's pain.
When I looked down, my one foot was badly damaged with my leg bone sticking out. I could see out of one eye a little bit and everything was blooding up very fast.
To add to his misery, Graham can barely hear the other men. His hearing aid has been lost in the crash.
You hit bad.
I'm afraid I can't feel my legs.
I couldn't move my legs. And then I realized that, I was paralyzed. You're lying there. You're the pilot. You are responsible. These guys are your responsibility. And I was thinking, Graham is in dire straits. He needs help.
We need to make radio contact. We need to contact Lusaka.
Okay.
Remember, you need to switch the radio on.
It's a massive risk. With the plane soaked in fuel, one spark from the radio's electrics could trigger an explosion and kill them all. But it's their only hope.
So we turned the radio on, and you can hear a click.
Mayday. Mayday. Can you hear me? Mayday! Mayday! Can you hear me? Mayday! Mayday, can you hear me? If you are out there, can you hear me?
I was lying on one wing, Graham was lying underneath the other thing. And I mean, we would have been fireballed.
Mumbo, turn it off. Turn it off now. Now!
I said, this is crazy, you know, we've got electrics flying around and let's turn it off, forget it, it's not going to work.
Their only means of communication is damaged beyond repair. The four men are now stranded in one of the remotest areas of Central Africa, with no idea if anyone even knows that they've crashed.
Would anybody be missing us? Is anybody going to come and look for us? And how would they ever find us in this place?
They now face a new danger. Exposure to the blistering African temperatures, which can rise to over 100 degrees.
The sun just bearing down on you, you couldn't get out of it, you were exposed. It certainly felt as if I was burning.
3 hours since the crash, the intense heat and lack of water is beginning to take its toll on the men.
It was so hot that we all needed water very badly.
Without water, the men will soon begin to suffer extreme dehydration.
You can survive without food for ages and ages, but you can't survive without water for very long.
I wanted Mumba to go into the trees and see if he could find some water. But he didn't want to go into the trees.
You need to find water, okay? Water.
He was definitely afraid. Almost certainly he was in shock and traumatized.
You need to get some water.
Going in! Going in!
Yes! You're the only one that can move. Please, Mama. Okay.
To find water, Mumba must venture alone into the bush. But he knows it's also home to dangerous predators.
He definitely had a strong fear of wild animals, and we were in a game management area where there was a lot of game. I was sort of left in the clearing by myself and sort of listening for him. I was concerned for his welfare.
Eventually, Mumba returns.
I've managed to find a stream.
Excellent, Mumbo. Well done.
When Mumba came back and said, look, I've managed to find some water, then that was fantastic. Mumba was the hero of the moment. I mean, he really was.
Oh, that is good. That is so good.
The water brings only temporary relief to the men. As the sun goes down, it's no longer the heat that's the danger. Now it's the African night, where temperatures can rapidly drop close to freezing. Since they'd originally planned to be back by lunch, the men are dressed only in light clothing and are now at serious risk of hypothermia.
The problem with us was that we were completely exposed to the sky. It was quite cold. Graham was a constant source of concern. He was older, and he had this horrific broken leg.
I wasn't sure whether my foot was savable or not.
Graham is at real risk of developing gangrene in his severed foot. And his pain is so severe, he's drifting in and out of consciousness. Mumba lights a fire, but at a safe distance from the fuel-soaked plane. It brings no comfort to Graham or Adam.
What was that?
There were animals around.
My greatest concern was a hyena coming in and smelling my blood. Hyenas like bloody bits of meat to chew.
There were quite a lot of noises.
Clive. There's something out there.
Adam? Adam?
And then it suddenly shot off. It was a long night.
Adam knows that the threat of animals and the brutal temperatures mean the men will not survive for long.
I did feel guilt. I was a pilot, and as a pilot, you are ultimately responsible for the safety of all your passengers.
He must come up with a plan.
I was thinking somehow you've got to get them out of here alive.
Remember? The chances of us being found are very, very remote. No one's coming. No one knows we're here. We need you to go and find help.
I said, look, you know, the survival of a lot of people depends on this.
But Adam...
Please, Mamba. We need help.
It was our question of trying to reassure him that within him he had the ability to go and do this thing, and that he wasn't going to be eaten by a lion or trampled by an elephant.
It's too dangerous. There are animals out there, wild animals.
Mumba, you have to go.
Mumba faces a stark choice: to search for help alone in the dangerous African wilderness, or stay with his colleagues and watch them slowly die.
Adam has asked me to go and look for help. I told him it was too dangerous, but he insisted. I don't know what to do.
Adam wouldn't ask you if he had a choice.
He was very reluctant to go. He was clearly afraid. Definitely he was afraid.
I don't want to die.
You have to be strong.
I said to him, if you don't go, then you'll probably be left sitting here with 3 dead people.
If you go, we have a chance.
Okay.
Get some rest.
I don't know how I'm going to sleep tonight.
It's dawn. The time has come for Mumba to leave. But he has one vital task to complete before he can go. Every drop of water he can collect could be the difference between life and death for his injured colleagues.
We had no radio. There was no other way we could get out. Mumba was really our only hope of getting any salvation.
Thanks, Mama.
I'm going now.
It's a brave thing you're doing. Good luck, man.
You too.
I wasn't at all sure that he was going to have enough courage to go through with it. I thought that he'd come back again and say that, you know, he just couldn't.
Slowly but surely, he sort of moved out of the clearing and disappeared into the trees.
Adam has directed Mumba to where he believes there's a village.
I thought that if he just followed that stream, he'd find habitation, that there'd be people there.
If Adam is right, Mumba may be able to reach help in a matter of hours.
As every hour went past, I thought, well, this is good. You know, he probably is giving it a crack.
But Mumba is unaware that he's actually heading in the wrong direction, deeper into the African bush and further away from the village. The supply of water Mumba left behind will only last a few hours. Once it runs out, they'll have no means of collecting any more. Without water, it will be a matter of hours before severe dehydration will take its toll. Their survival depends on Mumba.
There was no response for the whole of the day. I was wondering, had he passed out along the way from exhaustion or something like that?
After 5 hours, Mumba has still not returned. The men are on their last few drops of water.
You know, your lips are cracked and sore, and your tongue tends to thicken. Water was absolutely fundamental to our survival.
In these conditions, a healthy person will die within 3 days from dehydration. But having experienced extreme physical trauma, the weakened men are even more vulnerable. It's now only a matter of time before they'll die in the unforgiving African sun.
Well, with Mumba gone, I realized I would have to try and find where the water was. I would have to find a way to move.
But with fractured vertebrae, Clive has been unable to move since the crash.
I really didn't know how I was going to do that. Any kind of movement was very painful. I started to wriggle along the ground and just sort of pushed my way through the vegetation, literally. That was extremely painful.
He doesn't realize that with every movement, he's risking permanent paralysis.
Suddenly, I could hear trickling water. I found a cool, clear spring of absolutely crystal clear water. I just put my head in there and just drank. It was absolutely magical. Nature was providing us with a real lifeline.
Clive finally reaches Graham. It's the first time he's seen him since the crash, and he's shocked by what he sees.
So that was a pretty emotional moment, actually, to see that he was grinning, you know.
How's it looking?
He clearly had concern for losing his leg. It was shocking to see his leg in that condition. One of his feet had snapped off above the ankle. It was lying on the ground, just attached by tendons. The blood had congealed. It was covered in ants. It looked like liquid tar. I didn't see how anybody could repair that leg.
Not bad, huh?
And it must surely have been hurting. He was certainly in pain.
For the first time, Clive is confronted with the true horror of Graham's injuries. Time is running out for the severely injured men. 8 hours since he left for help, and there's still no sign of Mumba. Clive knows that their fate is now in his hands.
I don't think Mumba made it, yeah.
Doesn't look that way. He'd be back by now.
I knew that there was every chance that Mumba might not have got through. I sat with Adam and we discussed the options. I decided that we would have to do something other than rely on Mumba. I could see a ridge, but if I could get up there, I felt I would be able to see what was below us, and maybe if there are any villages.
If Clive can see a village close enough, he could attempt to reach it, despite his fractured back.
I grabbed a pole and then tried to stand. Slowly, I inched my torso into a vertical position.
While he manages to stand, his progress is painfully slow.
Provided I didn't twist or turn or bend forward too quickly, I was okay. Climbing that hill was just really very, very difficult. When I got to the top of the summit, I looked down to the valley floor. There was no settlements. There was absolutely nothing. And a very steep descent to the valley floor, which would have made it extremely difficult to even get down there, let alone across it and find people.
With no village in sight, Clive realizes that in his disabled state, he has no chance of reaching safety.
As I stood on the ridge, I just suddenly was aware that I'd put a silver survival blanket in my top shirt pocket and thought this is a good place to put it. But it wasn't a logical decision. It wasn't something that I thought through, I just did it. I thought, well, somebody would possibly see it. It would increase our chances of being spotted.
36 hours since the crash, and time is running out. The condition of Clive's colleagues is worsening as they face another bitterly cold night.
Adam had physically deteriorated throughout that day. He was very weak. It was a very cold night, and he just seemed to go into uncontrollable shivers.
Adam doesn't know it, but he's now developed pneumonia. His lungs are inflamed and filling with fluid. Without urgent medical care, his lungs could collapse, and then he will slowly die.
I was really concerned that he wouldn't last very long. Watching him shivering like that was very tough.
As Adam weakens, Graham is fighting his own battle for survival.
By then I was beginning to smell a bit because I was beginning to go bad.
What Graham can smell is infection spreading rapidly through his severed foot. The open wound and exposed tendons are deteriorating with every hour that passes.
I looked down and there were 3 or 4 big black ants chewing away at the bits of meat and tendon and whatnot on the end of my leg. But there wasn't much I could do about it. I couldn't even brush them off.
I'd done a calculation that after another night of cold, I didn't think Adam would survive that.
Graham Child is struggling to stay conscious despite the pain from his severed leg. Pilot Adam Pope is suffering from chronic pneumonia.
Adam was beginning to get a lot weaker. I was beginning to lift his head to assist him with drinking water. It was quite distressing to see him deteriorating the way he was. I was really concerned that with the heat of the day, he would really suffer yet again.
Clive makes a desperate decision. He will attempt to reach safety despite his fractured back. He has no idea whether he's even capable of making it.
I wasn't really sure whether I could do it, but I was absolute agreement that I would rather try to do something like that than just sit there and watch these 2 guys slowly deteriorate. I'd sort of thought about it, but I kind of wanted it to be their idea because leaving them in the plane and walking away from the plane was almost breaking every rule in the book. But I couldn't see any other way, and as it turned out, neither could they.
We'll be waiting for you here.
It was quite an emotional moment.
The men know that this may be their final goodbye.
I'll see you soon, Adam.
All I remember was looking back at the plane. No one there to get them water. No one there to help them with anything they may need. They were just going to lie there, and if I didn't get through, they were just going to die. I just remember looking back, thinking, this is it. I might never see these guys again. That was a tough time, very tough time.
It's a massive gamble. Clive is not sure which direction will even lead him towards a village, or how far he will get in the dense African terrain. With barely a few hours' worth of water, the injured men are now alone and completely at the mercy of the African elements.
As soon as Clive went away, I knew that this was the last act, really. We couldn't survive much longer.
Adam and Clive are now clinging on to life. All they can do is wait and pray for rescue.
There was nothing else we could do. I don't know that we even communicated with each other. We might have shouted to each other once or twice during the day. But that took energy.
We were both completely vulnerable. We were on our own. We couldn't move. We couldn't do anything. We couldn't collect water. And we were vulnerable to any kind of foreign thing. My thought process were on my parents and my brothers to a certain extent, thinking this is not good for them, that, you know, that they must be suffering enormously because of this.
Graham, can you hear that?
Suddenly, this airplane flew out over the top of us, quite high, and it flew out a little distance beyond us.
A search plane is scouring the area. But Adam and Graham know that their plane is obscured by dense vegetation.
And eventually it flew off. We were pretty depressed. We were lying there thinking, that's probably the last chance we've got. I mean, that was a really good chance, and they obviously didn't see us.
Their one chance of rescue is gone. Deep in the wilderness, Clive also hears a plane, but he knows he'll never be spotted.
I walked for the whole day through different kinds of vegetation, crossing gullies. At the top of every ridge, you were convinced that at some point you'd get to the top and you look down and there would be the village that you were waiting for. And of course it wasn't. I began to get more frantic that the next ridge had to be finally the one I was looking for. And when that didn't come, all the insecurities came out. Am I in the right place? Have I gone the wrong way? I just thought, I failed. I haven't got through.
Clive's last ounce of strength deserts him. He can go on no further. As the temperature rises in the midday sun, there's an ominous sign. Vultures.
These birds are opportunist eaters, so, you know, they were circling over something they thought would be good to eat.
Vultures are scavengers that feed off the flesh of dead bodies. They can sense the men are close to death.
Hear something in the distance.
I was very excited. You know, I think the adrenaline was probably pumping as fast then as at any time.
And this helicopter comes flying in from our left.
The silver space blanket that Clive laid out was spotted by a search plane. With no place to land, a helicopter was dispatched to rescue the men. Atol Freiling, a volunteer rescuer, was in the chopper.
I never forget the pilot saying, "I don't think anyone can survive that." And that's when we saw this hand waving. And I said, no, there's somebody alive down there.
And I said, oh, this is fantastic. The whole surge of positive emotion that goes through you just seeing the helicopter. And a weight went off my shoulders there. God, this is, it was just amazing.
It was just a question now of time, and they'd lift me out.
Mumba finally reached a village, a day after the men were rescued. He later died of an unrelated illness. Completely unaware of the rescue, Clive English spent a night alone in the bush before he was finally rescued. He made a full recovery. Graham Child underwent emergency surgery on his foot. Remarkably, his foot was saved, and today he has full mobility.
When I saw Graham in the oxygen tent, I just could not believe that he still had his foot. It was just extraordinary that he'd sort of come through this the way he had, and he still seemed like somehow he would just survive. And he has. He has.
Adam Pope spent 72 hours paralyzed on the wing of the plane. It took him 5 years to learn to walk again.
When I was rescued, there was a sense of regret that a great adventure was ending. That whole kind of experience was now going to be fragmented and shattered, and you were going back into the real world.
Three men set out on the expedition of a lifetime to capture one of the rarest big game trophies, high in the remote mountains of Central Asia. But instead of returning home in triumph, a raging blizzard traps them at 10,000 feet.
That was one of the worst feelings I've ever had in my life.
And just when they think their nightmare is over, their rescue helicopter goes out of control and crashes into the mountains. Stranded, they face frostbite, starvation, and death in the icy wilderness.
If I don't walk out of here, these 100 people are going to be gone.
You don't live through these kind of things.
Kyrgyzstan is a remote mountainous country in Central Asia, formerly part of the Soviet Union. It's here that 3 hunters have come on a trip of a lifetime in search of the rare Marco Polo sheep.
The Marco Polo sheep is probably the most majestic ram that you would see anywhere in the world.
Spook Span is here with his father, Denny.
All right, let's go.
The trip is the pinnacle of their lifetime's passion for hunting.
We're very much country people. Grew up hunting, fishing, running up and down the creeks and the rivers.
Hunting often takes them away from their home in Tennessee, but this is their most adventurous journey to date.
I really didn't know anything about Kyrgyzstan, just that it was mountainous. I did know that.
Hey, let's have a little wait for the camera, guys.
Joining the father and son is Spook's Canadian hunting buddy, Clay Lancaster.
The biggest appeal with the hunting part is the adventure. I mean, a lot of people think it's all about just shooting something, but it's not about that. It's about getting away from cities, telephones, people, getting into the high mountains.
The 3 friends arrive in Kyrgyzstan and set off in minivans for their remote base camp. It's a whole 36 hours drive.
The journey out to the camp was the hardest part. It was a long and tough drive, it really was.
Come on, Clay, rise and shine.
There. I remember waking up and going, wow, is this ever cold? My feet were cold, my body was cold.
Hey. Oh. Yeah, we find
Mountains everywhere you looked, and it was absolutely beautiful.
This is it.
I felt about as remote as a human could possibly feel. I mean, we didn't even hear or see an airplane. I mean, there was nothing. Those are the kind of things that were a lot different than what I was used to.
Say, if I promise to be quick, calling home already, then?
Clay has brought along a satellite phone and GPS in case of emergency.
Back in 1 minute.
But Denny wants to check in with his wife, Ruby.
Hello, Ruby?
I called her and told her if we didn't fire a shot that this trip was worth it, because it was probably one of the most beautiful scenes I'd ever seen.
Boy, it was worth the journey. Thank you. Hope you said your goodbyes, Denny. From now on, this is strictly an emergency phone.
Well, you kidding, Clay? Every call to the wife is an emergency.
The hunters are on a tailor-made VIP tour, arranged in America. Based in a remote camp, 8 hours from the nearest town, they set off each day on horseback, accompanied by a team of local guides.
They were extremely friendly, extremely proud of their country, and they really wanted to teach you stuff.
They spent 2 whole weeks crossing miles and miles of frozen mountains in search of their prize.
They are a real challenge to hunt, because there's times when you're in, snow waist deep.
Just days before their trip is over, the hunters get a sight of what they came for.
Seeing that ram, I felt like I was dreaming. I didn't even feel like it was real. It was something that I dreamed about for years and years.
We were real pleased with the hunt. We'd taken 2 real pretty Marco Polo sheep.
So that night we had a special dinner to celebrate.
It's the final night of the hunt, and the locals are determined to send the guys off with a bang.
I don't drink, so I was having a hard time. I told them no, 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 no. Well, they just wouldn't accept no for an answer. And so when they counted to 3 and they all threw it back, I just took the glass and threw it by the side of my ear and poured it out behind me and slammed it back down and shook my head just like it about killed me, you know.
Having bagged their trophy, the hunters are looking forward to heading home. Denny, Spook and Clay leave base camp to travel on via the nearest town, over 300 miles away. But as they set off on the 8-hour journey, the weather begins to close in.
It had snowed a bunch. The road that we came in on, you couldn't actually even see it anymore because the wind got blown. It filled the road right in. I walked out away from the van, and I remember making a mark in the snow.
What'd you do that for?
I said, that's about as far as I think our Volkswagen van's gonna get.
I hope not.
I don't think we realized how deep and how bad it had got until we started.
Jeez, even I was being optimistic.
The snow is far too deep for the minivan, but the local guides now decide to carry on down the mountains to try and beat the oncoming blizzard.
And then that's when they said, oh, you have to get in this other truck. And I remember thinking, surprise, surprise. It was an old military type vehicle. It was wide open, the wind's blowing right up your tailpipe. It wasn't real comfortable in the back of there.
This was supposed to be, quote, VIP hunt, and that was part of what's supposed to make it so special. And we'd make a little joke about it, just having fun with it. You know, it didn't feel like much of a VIP treatment.
The truck heads off from base camp, but almost immediately, the snow from the blizzard begins to engulf their aging vehicle.
But we didn't go a mile till we got stuck really bad.
We had to get out and shovel the whole thing out, and we kept shoveling and getting the truck out. And everybody get pushing and get the truck rocking, and away it would go.
I've been driving a truck since I was, just a kid, and I guess I made the comment that I thought I could drive the truck through the snow.
With Denny at the wheel, they struggle on through the snow.
And he did an awesome job. We actually made it further while he was driving than we did with anybody else.
But after a few hours, Denny tires and has to give up.
After he started back, he never let me drive anymore.
And as the day goes on, they keep hitting snowdrifts.
We reached a point where we couldn't really tell where the road was at.
Every time we come to some of the hills, we'd get stuck 3 or 4 times on the hills. And eventually have to shovel the whole hill off, and then he could get a run, get to the top, and we'd go a little further.
It just snowed and snowed and snowed and snowed, and it got deeper.
By late afternoon, the hunters have come too far to turn back. And the weather is getting worse.
Well, it started to get completely white, where every rock was covered. I mean, it was just solid white. The snow was snowing, and nothing looked familiar. You're in this huge, vast valley. We're getting stuck worse and worse and more and more.
As the hours pass, The battle to make headway is taking its toll.
The snow got so deep, you'd shovel it out and you wouldn't go 10 yards.
We were just too exhausted to try to dig out anymore.
I kept thinking, you know, this is starting to get to be a bad situation. When you start getting your progress down from, you know, 200-300 yards at a time to 2-3 yards at a time, or 2-3 feet at a time, that's when you start to realize this is done. We're stuck, and where we're at right now is where we're going to stay.
The hunters are stranded in an icy wilderness, 10,000 feet above sea level in a raging snowstorm. Night is fast approaching, and the temperatures begin to plummet to minus 40 degrees.
How am I going to get out of here?
We decided just to stop and spend the night and wait and hopefully figure out a way to get out.
That's when you're beginning to get a little bit apprehensive about, you know, how am I going to get out of here?
The hunters know they have no option but to stay put in the middle of nowhere.
It's gonna be one hell of a night for sure.
It did get worse and became a real problem.
As night falls, the temperatures plummet. Exposure to this extreme of cold can kill human beings within minutes. With just their snowsuits and a thin canvas, they have to huddle up to keep as warm as they can.
I mean, it got down to, you know, somewhere around 30 to 40 below zero that night. The back of the truck was very crowded and it was very cold. It wasn't a fun, comfortable night by no means.
I was apprehensive, scared about the cold, being out of food. It was hard.
Maybe some sleeping bags down there.
Dad is very, you know, compassionate, always thinking of other people.
Somebody else.
And he was worried about, were they going to be warm enough? We gave them whatever they needed, socks, boots, you know, jackets, whatever we had that we didn't have on our body ourselves, we let them use.
It's okay.
As night wears on, the locals sense just how dangerous the situation is.
They're getting a little worried. They live there all the time. They realize that people don't go out of their way to come save them, and there's no such thing as a search and rescue or anything like that.
Their behavior went from kind of being a jovial, you know, fun, laughing, joking, to now it was just a blank stare, desolate, concern, worry, disbelief.
The hunters make it through a bitterly cold night. But dawn brings no let-up in the weather. And as Clay emerges from the truck, he's in for a shock. Overnight, the truck has been engulfed by a whiteout. Clay can now no longer tell land from sky.
There was nothing to see anymore. It was just a solid snow landscape. You're in this huge, vast valley. Nobody really knows where they're at. That was a nerve-wracking feeling.
To make matters worse, the local guides begin to turn to the Westerners for suggestions of what to do next.
When you got them out of their normal routine, that they didn't have a clue what to do. And that was, I think, the part that got scary. And that's when we decided, look, they're not going to get us out. We're going to have to do something else.
Seems like more and more, they're starting to look to me what to do. I'm in a foreign country, and I really don't know what to do.
Clay knows that they're stuck and in big trouble. Using his satellite phone, he makes an emergency call to the man who they booked the hunting trip from.
He was in Russia at the time, in Moscow.
This is Clay Lancaster.
And he kept making light of the situation. No, it's not bad, it's not bad. And I kept saying to him, you don't realize where we're at and what's going on right now. Like, we are stuck.
Our truck is jammed in the snow. We can't dig it out.
Pretty soon he was to the point of, hey, I gotta go for supper right now. I'm busy, I can't talk to you.
Hello?
And hung up the phone and turned his phone off.
Hello?
At that point there, it's a good thing I wasn't around him.
Can you believe this guy?
I said, that's it. I'm not relying on people here. I'm getting a hold of my brother back in Canada.
But the battery in Clay's satellite phone is already on reserve. It's just seconds away from dying out.
These are our coordinates. It's north 42.
It was a frustrating point. I was like, why did I let so much of that battery wear down? And it was the last battery that I had.
Just as he's giving their exact location,
16. Hello?
the phone goes dead.
Hello? You think he heard you?
With no phone, the hunters are now completely isolated. All they can do is hunker down and try to keep warm.
Oh, thanks a lot.
We kind of got into survival mode, I guess.
Just thinking about Ruby.
Human instincts for survival do kick in when you get into a situation that you have to do something to survive.
The hunters and guides finish their last scraps of food. With nothing left to eat, they'll weaken and succumb to the cold more quickly. It's now been 24 hours since they left base camp, and they begin to doubt that they'll ever be rescued.
At this point, you're wondering, are they going to come after us, you know?
You okay, Danny?
Just thinking about Ruby. She's expecting me back tomorrow.
It was definitely a concern of mine that if somebody does get to us, are they going to get to us on time?
You're thinking about your kids, thinking about your family, your wife. I don't know, it's hard to stay motivated. I mean, you feel helpless.
As the second night falls, the temperatures plummet again. And so does the mood in the truck.
Having to be out there another night when it's 30 or 40 below and realizing that nobody's gonna be there, it's just, I don't know, it's an undescribable feeling.
But despite everything, Clay is determined not to give up.
I kind of set my mind that this is not where I'm gonna die at. I'm not ready for that right now.
He wants to walk away from the truck towards their base camp, where he can recharge his phone and call for help.
I talked to them guys and said, if nobody comes the following day, then I'm gonna try and walk out of here. One way or the other, I'm not gonna stay here and just wait.
But leaving the vehicle breaks a golden rule of survival.
You can't help but be just a little bit afraid of how hard that might be. What all the consequences might be if you started the wrong direction. There was basically no way to know exactly which way to go.
The attitude from everybody else was like, we'll never make it. We need to stay with the vehicle. That's our best chance. The longer you stay with that vehicle, that's probably what your best odds are.
It's an agonizing dilemma. Clay may never make it alive to the base camp, but staying put and doing nothing may also threaten the lives of the whole hunting party.
If you look at it from the other side, that if nobody comes, that's probably far more dangerous. And how many days do you go without food before your strength's not going to be there to be able to do something like that? At what point should I go? At what point should you decide, hey, let's try and get out of here?
Dawn on the third day brings a life-changing decision for Clay Lancaster. Stay and hope rescue will come, or risk hiking out to find help.
I thought to myself, okay, I'll give it to the end of today, and if nothing's happened by the end of today, then I'm walking. I definitely set it up in my mind that I was going to go.
As the weather clears, Clay's decision to stay proves to be the right one.
Listen.
Now it's like, there they are.
It's a helicopter, I know it is. Come on!
You know, it was a great feeling to see that helicopter come in.
Clay's phone call of the previous day has got through.
These are our coordinates.
You know, everybody was excited. It was a thrilling moment, feeling of relief.
After 36 hours out in the cold, the party has finally been rescued.
It went from just miserable, cold and hungry, and all of a sudden, boom, all of it's gone.
I remember looking at Spook and giving him a high five and going, it's about time.
They've only eaten scraps of food in the last 2 days, and they're ravenously hungry.
The food tasted really good.
Dinner's gone. That's right.
And, of course, they had their vodka. They always have vodka, you know. That's like water to them.
But no sooner has the helicopter landed than the hunters are astonished to see another unexpected sight heading towards them in the distance.
And then all of a sudden, here comes 3 snowmobiles.
We didn't have a clue who they were, where they were coming from.
It was like something you would see in a movie and you'd say, oh, that wouldn't really happen. These guys pull up, and the guys were from America. They spoke English.
We were kind of really shocked to see English-speaking U.S. Border Patrol guys on snow machines where we were at.
The Americans are on a training mission to help the Kyrgyzstan army, and they've been diverted to rescue the men.
And they said, we're here to get you guys out. And said, we'll do whatever you want to do, any way you want to do it.
Clay, Denny, and Spook now have a crucial decision to make. Do they ride out overland with American military? Or take the much faster route on board the local Kyrgyzstani helicopter?
What do you think? About a half hour ago, and we got some Kurds in bad shape.
We were kind of anxious to get home.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
The 3 of us agreed, no, we'd stay on this helicopter and fly directly back to Bishkek, because that's where it was going to. So it'd save us at least a day.
Decision made. The guides load up the chopper. But Spook notices it's carrying an enormous load.
As I get on the helicopter, and I just had a brief thought of, you know, that's kind of weird, you know, all our gear is just piled up in the middle of the floor in the helicopter. It's not strapped down, it's just kind of stacked up.
As it struggles to take off, he begins to doubt they've made the right decision.
And I look back at Clay and I said, do you think we're overloaded? But I mean, the crew seemed to be okay with it, so we just kind of let it roll off our shoulders and went with it.
The pilot gets airborne, and finally the ordeal is over. The three friends are on their way home.
I thought, great, we're finally going home. Finally, we're heading out of here.
Of the Kyrgyz people that were with us on the hunt, they was talking about, you know, pointing and all this stuff and laughing. They'd never been on a helicopter before, so they were laughing about getting a ride.
I remember looking out the window, just, you know, being one of those surreal moments where it almost didn't seem like what had happened had happened.
But as the helicopter makes its way over the mountains, it becomes clear something is wrong.
I could feel the helicopter sort of tip ahead a little bit. I thought, well, maybe it's out of balance or something.
Move back.
Each moved back 1 seat.
Get back. Move back.
I remember looking back out of the window and still seemed like we were high up. And that's the last thing I remember.
The helicopter suddenly spins out of control and plummets to the ground.
I didn't even have time to put my hands up, and then my face flew right into the top of the roof of the helicopter.
It's just a horrifying moment. The fuel tank was on top of me.
I remember all of a sudden going, that looks kind of close. And then boom, we hit. We went sideways and we flipped 8, 9 times.
People were screaming and hollering and stuff was flying in every direction.
These drums came past me and hit me a couple of times. Then all of a sudden we came to a sliding sort of stop.
First thing I thought of was, you know, you don't live through these kind of things.
The helicopter is ripped open on impact. In the front, Clay is injured, his left eye badly bloodied. The first thing he hears are Denny's cries.
Denny started hollering from the back.
Where is he? Can you see him? Spook! Answer me, son. Answer me, son. Spook!
He didn't answer me.
Denny has no idea if his son has survived the crash.
That was one of the worst feelings I've ever had in my life. And I don't know whether it was 1 minute or 5 minutes or whatever it was. It seemed like an eternity.
As I turned to my right, I seen Spook laying down beside me. I said, it's okay, he's right here, he's right here. I said, I got him.
Spook!
Spook is alive but badly injured. He's been crushed on impact and has broken 6 ribs.
Easy, son.
I had blood coming out of my mouth. I could actually feel 1 or 2 of my ribs moving when I would breathe. Felt like knives sticking in me. I've never been in that much pain in that many different places.
Denny and Clay pull him out of the wreckage.
It was like something that would happen to you in a dream. And all of a sudden, you just go deaf. It just goes quiet.
And it's only now Clay realizes that he too is badly injured.
And I realized at that point there that I couldn't see anything out of my one eye.
That eye? It was bloody and looked like his eyeball was just torn out almost. You know, I thought it was gone.
And I looked at Denny and I said,
How bad is it? It's bad.
Clay has lost the sight in one eye. But despite his injury, he and Denny head back into the wreckage to help the others still trapped inside.
There was some people's faces were just torn. It was really, really bad. People were hurt bad. One of the ladies was under the helicopter, and her husband was trying to pull her out. And there was no doubt in my mind that that lady was dead. I don't remember how much time had passed, but he put her in his arms, carried her out, and he'd got her way away from the helicopter, and she was actually alive. I couldn't believe it.
Amidst the carnage, Clay makes a shocking discovery.
So I started trying to count, and then I looked at one of the guides, and I had asked where this young fellow was that had been looking after the horses, and nobody could see him anywhere.
Just feet from the wreckage, half buried in the snow, is the body of the young guide.
That was it, he was gone. It was a really weird feeling for me because 15 seconds before that, he'd moved into my seat.
Everybody, move back.
I've thought about it many times since then. I've looked back on it, wondering and thinking what would have happened if I hadn't moved.
The guide and the pilot have been killed in the crash. But the survivors are now in an even more desperate situation than before the rescue. They're severely injured, need urgent medical attention, and are out in the wilderness with no protection from the freezing cold.
One of the ladies that was one of the cooks had really bad internal injuries, plus a broken pelvic bone. There was another fellow that was unconscious. He was breathing, he had a pulse and everything, but didn't seem to respond to anything at all.
It was a sad feeling, and knowing that people were hurting like they were, and it didn't seem to be anything that you could do.
They're totally stranded, and with no life left in the satellite phone, they have no communication with the outside world.
And we knew that we had already run the battery down to dead.
But Clay knows he can't give up. He has to do something. It's their only chance.
I knew the battery was dead, but I was wearing wool pants. So I grabbed the battery and I just started rubbing it on my leg, trying to create some friction on it.
Clay is hoping that the warmth from the friction will produce enough heat to recharge the battery.
And I rubbed it, hour and a half kind of thing, and just kept rubbing it. And then I put it back on my phone, turned it on, and I pushed send.
It produces the slimmest of lifelines.
Hello?
It went through to my brother.
Hey, it's me again.
And I said helicopter crashed, and I got half the GPS coordinates of where we're at to him.
Bro?
And then the phone went dead.
You still there? Bro? Bro?
Did my brother catch it all? Did he write it down? I don't know.
With no idea if the coordinates got through, they now face their third night out in the wilderness. And Clay realizes Denny is in extreme pain.
You okay, Danny?
My pain seemed to get worse as the nights went on.
Okay.
I had him lift up his shirt and could see a lot of bruising.
It's my ribs.
The adrenaline has been masking the pain until now.
I could tell his ribs were broken, and I was worried that, something was going to happen to him, whether it was puncturing a lung or maybe he'd already done something. Maybe he had some bleeding inside, too.
I say you've broken a couple of ribs there, Danny.
Yeah, well, maybe, but you don't look too good yourself.
The temperature plummets, and exposed on the mountainside, they have no protection against the -40-degree cold.
Several of the other people had gone and built a fire. And there wasn't really that much stuff to burn other than just stuff that was on the helicopter, you know.
The local guides turn to alcohol to keep warm and blot out their fear.
They opened up a bottle of vodka, drank the entire thing, grabbed another one, chugged about half that. They really had the attitude, well, we're definitely not going to make it now. Nobody's going to come get us. I think people really believed they weren't going to make it through the night.
Drinking alcohol may numb their senses, but it also dilates their blood vessels, causing their bodies to lose heat even faster.
And there was a lot of people, their attitude was, this is it, we're done, and they just started drinking the vodka.
As night wears on, the fire begins to burn out. In a panic, the local guides look for anything to keep it alive.
I see people start burning their clothes, throwing jackets in there and shoes and stuff.
It was like crazy. They just couldn't cope with it. They didn't try to preserve anything for any later moments.
I thought this is going to get really bad in a quick hurry.
Clay decides he must act, or risk everyone dying on the mountainside.
I'm not really good at sitting there and not doing anything. I don't really wait for anybody else to tell me what to do. I just go do it.
But Clay himself is carrying an awful injury.
I took a bunch of snow, cleaned off my eye the best that I could, and actually took some duct tape that I had there and just duct taped it up.
He now realizes he has no option. Half blind, he knows he must leave the wreckage and seek help.
This isn't good, you know. If I don't walk out of here, there's definitely going to be some other people that are going to be gone. You sit and wait when it could be 2 or 3 days before somebody comes along. I wasn't willing to take that risk.
I think this is where we are.
Spook and Denny are too injured to go with Clay.
You'd never make it.
The one husband, he was extremely concerned about his wife.
I'll take one of these guys with me.
There's a real strong bond that as soon as I got to camp, I could see between the two of them. So I thought at that point, you know, if we wait 2 or 3 days here, she's definitely not going to be here. And that's when I said to him, I go, tomorrow morning, you and I are going to have to walk out of here. And he really didn't want to lose her. He broke down pretty hard. So that's when we made up our mind the next morning that we were taking off.
Heading out into the snowbound wilderness will put Clay's life at risk, and there's little chance he'll find help. But staying put could mean everyone perishing in the cold.
There was a bunch of people saying, you know, don't go, don't go, don't go. I wasn't really into discussing it with anybody anymore. I went through the options in my mind, and I thought, if I don't go, then there really is going to be quite a few more people that are not going to make it.
Clay makes up his mind to head out in search of rescue. The husband of the seriously injured Kirk woman volunteers to go with him.
He took my gun, some shells, and, you know, they struck out. I was kind of nervous for him because that snow, you know, I mean, it was 2.5, 3 foot deep, and it's tough walking in that kind of conditions. really tough.
They head due north, hoping to find a local road and the remote chance of civilization.
This is going to be a long, tiring day, and I'm not real optimistic about where I'm going to.
But just when they think their plight can get no worse, they're hit by an almighty blizzard.
It started snowing again like crazy. It was a complete whiteout blizzard. And when you're in a complete whiteout like that, in that kind of a landscape, the snow as deep as it is, you actually get to a point where you can't see anything. You can't make out any other color than literally to hold your hand in front of your face. I would walk, then I would stop and I'd reach in my pocket. I would take the compass out, and I would find I was going in a completely opposite direction than I thought. I thought I was walking in a perfectly straight line.
With only one eye, the blizzard causes Clay debilitating snow blindness.
You know, there's a lot of strain on my eye, and just not having any depth perception where you can't see rocks or trees or grass or anything. Everything you look at is white. You don't know if you're going uphill, if you're going downhill. You just step, 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 step. I concentrated on my family and thinking about them, and just kept walking.
Back at the wreckage, Denny and Spook can only wait and hope Clay will make it through.
Seeing death around you, seeing people other people who you think may die within the next few hours, and being faced with the possibility that you may be one of those people. I had thoughts about, missing out on my kids growing up, and, all the things that you get to experience and enjoy as a father. Fishing trips, hunting trips, ball games, plays, just watching them grow up. I love my wife dearly, and the thoughts of, not getting to see her again, race through your mind. It was the worst feeling, the worst moments that I've ever experienced.
Clay and the guide have been battling through the snow for 10 hours.
My legs didn't have the energy. Every time I'd step, I was like, take a deep breath, and it's just like picking up a chunk of lead.
They're completely exhausted.
It was getting closer to dark, and I hit the top of the hill.
Then, out of nowhere, he sees the sign of life he's been hoping for.
I looked in front of me, and I could see a military outpost, and I could hear snow machines.
It's a chance of rescue. But the riders of the snowmobiles can't see Clay and the guide. He has to find a way to get their attention.
It didn't seem like it got anybody's attention.
But Clay notices that one of the riders has stopped.
He went to the back part of his machine, and I fired a shot back behind him. And I watched with my binoculars, and his head popped up. I fired a second shot. And they all kind of turned and looked back towards him. And I could see they seen me, and they all jumped on the machine and come roaring to where I was at.
Incredibly, The snowmobiles are the same ones from the US military that Clay, Denny and Spook turned down a lift with just 36 hours earlier.
Seeing English-speaking guys on snow machines at that point, I was pretty happy to see them.
After 3 days out in the mountains, their ordeal is finally over.
Hearing that snowmobile get closer and closer and seeing him pull up, it was a sweet feeling.
Oh, it was just a great feeling. That was one of the greatest feelings I've ever had.
The hunters are flown to Hong Kong, where they receive medical treatment. Clay's eye is treated, and his sight is saved.
Do I still hunt like I did before? Yes. Probably with more respect for nature still, and with a big smile on my face that I'm still here to do it.
I had a great love for life before the crash, and I have that same love for life afterwards.
I'm a very blessed man. Not only to get out of a helicopter crash, but to have great people to come home to.
Ken Jones is on a solo mission to climb Romania's highest peak. Alone and miles from civilization, his quest becomes a fight for survival when he's hit by an avalanche.
I ran as fast and as frantic as I could. I was running for my life.
He's thrown down the mountain. His pelvis is shattered.
It was agony, like a red-hot poke was being pushed into the side of my leg.
Unable to walk, he has no way to call for help. His only hope, an agonizing 8-mile crawl. Across rivers and through a frozen wilderness. His greatest fears are being eaten alive or freezing to death.
One slip, I'd be dead.
Journeying into the heart of the Transylvanian Alps, a remote region of central Romania, is Ken Jones, a former British paratrooper in search of a holiday with a difference.
I think I'm quite a nomadic person. I tend to spend quite a lot of time on my own. I've always got an urge to travel or go off and do things. It just seems to be in my blood. I get restless and I need to go.
Ken's military background has given him a taste for extreme adventure, and he's chosen to challenge himself in one of Europe's wildest landscapes.
Romania ticked a lot of boxes for me. I just wanted to remove myself from the tourist trail. I wanted a challenge, somewhere I could make life a little bit tougher for myself.
He's on a solo mission to climb Mount Moldovano, but it's not for the faint-hearted. At 8,300 feet, it's Romania's highest peak. And in the depths of winter, even reaching the mountain is a risky business.
It was a crazy and dangerous journey. The taxi driver's just driving like a lunatic up the road. I just thought, what the hell am I doing? This is probably as dangerous as the mountain.
In the summer, this wild landscape would be teeming with hikers. But in mid-January, the snow and sub-freezing temperatures mean few people are brave enough to venture alone into these unforgiving mountains.
I became aware of just more or less having the whole mountain range to myself. It was a nice feeling, but it was kind of scary as well. You become aware of and your own smallness.
Normally it's a 2-day climb to the top of the mountain. But super fit ex-army man Ken has challenged himself to conquer it in a single day.
Me and my brothers were always really competitive. We'd always race each other to the bus stop each morning, and on the way to school, everything was a race. I do like the feeling of my body working and functioning well, and I soon found a good rhythm. I'm a fanatical lover of freedom. And sometimes you've just got to put yourself out on your own, just to enjoy a different kind of peace.
Ken's made light work of the lower slopes. But hazardous terrain ahead threatens his ambitious bid for the summit. A clear channel through the trees offers the most direct route to the top. This man-made fire break prevents the spread of fires in the summer months, but in winter it's a hotspot for deadly avalanches.
I did an Arctic warfare course in the army, and I knew about the possibility of avalanches. I was well versed in drills and how to deal with them.
With his goal in sight, Ken ignores the risks and opts to fast-track it to the top.
The snow on these upper reaches of the slope was more of a fine powder. And at points I'd sink up to my waist. My going slowed down significantly, and it became really hard work. There was a ramp. It was a really steep wall, so I needed to rely heavily on my crampons and my ice axe, and that was pretty tricky. At one point I got halfway up, and I just slipped.
The fall serves as a warning. The mountain is treacherous, but Ken is determined to keep going. Ken retraces his steps and soon passes the point of his slip. With effort comes reward. His choice of extreme location is starting to pay off.
I really felt like I was in my own world up there. I was totally exposed and totally alone. This is as remote as I'd ever been. Very few people are privileged with having a whole mountain range to themselves.
But the punishing conditions have put him behind his ambitious schedule. Few hours of daylight remain, and the clock is ticking on his bid for the top.
I knew with the amount of snow on the mountain it would be pretty tough, but I felt really fit and strong. I trained hard, and so I felt good about getting to the top.
Sheer athleticism and extraordinary determination bring him within reach of his goal. But as the sun sets, he must decide whether to make a last-ditch push for the top or retreat to shelter and make a second attempt in the morning.
I kept hoping that the snow level would change or be a bit more friendly to me. I kept walking a bit more, not quite wanting to give up, but doubts started coming into my mind as to whether I'd make the top that day. Summits are always important, but there comes a point when you've got to say, enough's enough, don't do anything silly.
Reluctantly, Ken opts to return to the relative safety of the trees.
The plan was to get securely into the forest so I could dig a snow hole or set up my poncho. I didn't want to be exposed on the open slope, and You know, the trees offered some natural shelter.
At night, the mountain will be even more treacherous. Ken needs to descend quickly and find level ground to camp. Again, the firebreak offers the most direct route. But following it is a dangerous strategy.
All of a sudden, there was just a noise from the top of a mountain. At first, I thought it was something like an animal. It was so strange and unearthly. I'd never heard anything like it before. And then I realized that this is an avalanche. I was transfixed. I'd never seen an avalanche before. In a way, it was perverse. I just wanted to look at it. I should have turned and run, but it's just something so big and magnificent.
But Ken has no time to lose. Each passing second brings him closer to death.
I turned my back on it. I'd run as fast into the forest as I could possibly make it. And all the time I could feel like it was chasing me. My heart was beating, it was just going crazy. It was going to hit me, bury me. I thought I was going to die.
Ken dives to safety in the nick of time, and the avalanche is funneled down the firebreak.
It would have definitely killed me without a doubt. I was pretty shaken for a while. And then when I realised I was safe and I calmed down, then I just started to laugh.
He's had a narrow escape, but he's still in danger. The snow on these upper slopes is unstable.
After the avalanche, I began to feel really vulnerable on the slope. I need to find somewhere safe to sleep. So I wanted to drop down, get deeper into the forest, sleep for the night, and still possibly be able to make an ascent the next day.
It's now a race to descend to safer ground before nightfall. But through the trees, the going quickly gets tough.
But the terrain became more treacherous. Branches were poking in my eye. It was becoming a bit of a nightmare.
The rough terrain and the slope of the mountain forces him back onto open ground.
I knew the quickest passage was down the firebreak between the trees. I didn't want to go anywhere near it again. But I had no choice. I had to go down it.
But taking this shortcut is a serious gamble. In his race against the light, Ken decides it's a risk worth taking. But his luck has run out. The mountain is about to show him how lethal it can be. This time it's on him in an instant. It's run or die.
I ran as fast and as frantically as I could. I was running for my life. And then the next thing I knew, it pulled me off my feet. I was utterly terrified. It swallows you and engulfs you. You can feel all your bones and organs inside, everything's rattling. All of a sudden, I was falling. And then I was thinking, this is really bad. I landed on my ass and I heard a massive crack. And that was my pelvis shattering and the head of my femur snapping off. must have lost consciousness. I lay there, not knowing what was happening or where I was. I couldn't really feel anything. It was dark.
The fall has inflicted a bloody gash to his head. But Ken is about to discover that his body has suffered a far more deadly blow.
The pain finally hit me. It was absolute agony. It was like a red-hot poke was just being pushed into the side of my leg.
The impact has broken his femur and smashed his hip joint through his pelvis, shattering it to pieces. Bone fragments have severed blood vessels around the pelvis, causing internal bleeding and making his core body temperature plummet. In this extreme environment, his injuries could prove fatal. Ken knows it's bad, but is unaware of the full extent of the damage.
I sat up and started assessing my situation. As I put my hand to the side of my leg, my left hand felt wet and sticky, and I got a big open wound on a couple of inches on the side of my left hip. It was bleeding quite heavily.
He needs to act quickly to prevent further loss of blood, which could harm his chances of survival.
I managed to force myself to roll on my side. Pulled a first field dressing from my pocket. And that seemed to stem a flow of blood. And after I dressed it, I pulled my trousers back up and decided not to look at it again. My natural instinct was to get up and walk. My leg was in pain, but I wasn't sure if it was broken. I felt a jolt of agonizing pain shoot up my leg, and it became apparent that there was no way in hell I could walk. My leg was gone. It was a pretty desperate situation.
He's in urgent need of medical attention, but he's 8 miles from the nearest village and has no mobile or satellite phone. With military discipline, he's packed for the harsh conditions, but the avalanche has torn off his backpack and buried it further up the mountain.
I was deprived of all my provisions, my sleeping bag, my stove, my meals, everything I needed to survive.
Nobody knows where Ken is or the danger he's in. If he's to cheat death, the stamina and self-reliance that brought him here must now get him out. But he faces a tough dilemma. Go up in the vain hope of finding his life-saving kit, or conserve precious time and energy and descend in search of help.
It was a real tough decision to know what to do. The implications of making the wrong decision were deadly.
He then spots his torch, which has fallen from his backpack and miraculously turned itself on.
This torch was now my best means of survival. If I could get the torch, then I'd possibly have a chance, even if it's a small one, of finding my other items of kit. I'd have a bit more food. I'd have a sleeping bag. It was small distance, but it was so painful and so difficult to cover the ground.
Ken finds his hat and a waterproof sack before eventually salvaging his torch. But hopes of recovering his backpack and sleeping bag are futile. His route is blocked by a vertical ledge.
Under normal conditions, I could have negotiated it effortlessly. But like this, it was impossible. was a pathetic effort, and I just fell over backwards. My leg folded up underneath me, and it just wrenched at the joint.
He has two options: to keep searching for his kit, or conserve time and energy and head back down the slope to find help.
I decided I was going to go back down the mountain. The least difficult way of moving was in a sitting position. Every time I moved, I could just feel bone grating and sliding inside of me. I'd be retching in agony.
Ken has trained hard, but nothing has prepared him for this pain. For over an hour, he descends with gritted teeth until he finds flatter ground to rest. But it's only the beginning of his ordeal. The foot on his broken leg is painfully swollen. He needs to ease the pressure immediately, or gangrene will take his foot.
I realised the implications of not getting my left boot off really quickly. I could feel the bones grating and moving around in my leg. I mean, I had to inflict this pain upon myself. There's no other option. If I didn't get the boot off, I was going to lose my foot. It was almost blissful just to have my feet free, and all the blood that was stuck in my foot could work its way back up my leg.
The relief is short-lived. At night, temperatures plunge rapidly to as low as -15 degrees. His only protection is a mountain jacket and a waterproof sack which he uses to shield his feet from the biting wind. His body desperately needs food to provide him with energy to fight off the cold. His last provisions are stowed in his pocket, and it's vital he rations them carefully.
I had a small plastic bag with some crushed sausage rolls. I got kind of careless, and before I knew anything, it was gone. I'd eaten the packet.
Ken faces a long night ahead. The idea of being alone in the middle of nowhere preys on his mind.
The scenarios are running through my head were, I don't know, what if I don't get through the night?
If he falls asleep, his body will stop shivering. He'll develop hypothermia, and he'll die.
I was shivering so heavily I knew that I'd fall into the last stages of hypothermia and I'd never wake up. I just thought, oh God, how am I going to get through this night? Just don't fall asleep or you'll never wake, you're going to die. Sleep was a potential death sentence, and it's constantly beckoning you, and it's so easy to do. And you realise as well, all you've got to do is shut your eyes, and you're not in pain anymore.
Facing a long and tortuous night alone in the wilderness, Ken's spirits hit rock bottom.
I just thought, how can time do this to me? It felt like a lifetime had passed. There's maybe 7 or 8 more hours to go through yet, and it's going to get colder. By 3 or 4 in the morning, the temperature's going to plummet even further. As time went on, I got more lonely. I thought about all sorts of strange things, comforting things like being warm in bed, and I thought about my brother and playing football and anything to distract my mind from the pain and the suffering I was in. The night was just a battle to stay awake. When daylight did arrive, it was overwhelming. It was such a relief. And the darkness can bring all this paranoia, when for daylight I realised I could do something.
In the early hours of a cold mid-January morning, the chances of anyone being in this inhospitable wilderness are remote. Ken only has himself to rely on, but the enormity of the task ahead preys on his mind, and he can't help hoping for rescue.
I kind of had it in my mind. Maybe emergency services would be called out. I imagined a helicopter or a couple of mountain rescue guys just walking through the forest blowing a whistle. I imagined all these little scenarios, but the more I thought about them, I just dismissed them. I was pinning so much hopes on so many slight what-ifs.
With his pelvis shattered, Ken knows he's in big trouble. Nobody knows of his ordeal or is expecting him back anytime soon. With no mobile or satellite phone, his only hope is that his training in hostile environments can get him to the nearest village, 8 miles from the mountain.
My army instructors always said, don't stand still, move and innovate or die. You've got to constantly be assessing your situations. As soon as you stop that thought process, it's all over. You can't think your way out of trouble. Your body's just a tool that will carry out the plan you formulate in your mind. You've got to do something.
With no food and his water bottle already drained, Ken sets out on his marathon journey down the mountain. He endures hours of bone-crunching effort, but covers little ground, and the exertion gives him a raging thirst. He's surrounded by water, but it's frozen. Eating the snow just lowers his body's core temperature and causes further dehydration.
I did eat snow. It would just melt into the smallest amount of water, so it wouldn't really quench my thirst.
A river in the valley below will give him the water he desperately needs. But Ken also knows that it leads back to the track where the taxi dropped him off 24 hours ago.
I figured it'd be the most likely place I could be rescued, so I just needed to get there and make as much ground as possible.
After an agonizing descent, Ken makes it off the steep slopes of the mountain. It's an incredible feat, but moving in the valley below poses an even tougher challenge.
When I hit the valley floor, there was no more sitting down and sliding, no more assistance from gravity. It was all physical exertion from then on.
Facing an enormous task to reach civilization, Ken sets small goals to measure his progress.
I started trying to play these little games of beating the clock. I'd set myself times to get to targets.
His progress is painfully slow. Each new target reached is a massive achievement, but also a harrowing reminder of the mammoth task ahead. Time is running out on his chances of survival, and he's still 7 miles from the nearest village.
My desire to keep moving was just to reach water. I was so dehydrated, I'd exerted myself so heavily.
After a brutal crawl along the valley floor, Ken finally reaches the river.
The banks were higher than the water level, so it was kind of hard for me to reach down and get access to the water. So I had the idea of tying the ends of my shoelaces around the neck of a bottle relief on my mouth was blissful. It was like petrol going into a car. I just felt my body reviving, being full of energy again.
Re-energized, Ken wills himself on, in search of the road he hopes will lead him to help. But he soon finds that access along the bank is blocked. The river, which provided him life-sustaining water, has now become his greatest obstacle. He's left with no choice but to cross.
I didn't want to accept I was going to have to cross the stream. I just sat down the bank looking at it. This is a mountain stream in the middle of January. It's as cold as it could get without completely freezing over. One slip, get my jacket wet. I'll give myself 20 minutes to live, and I'd be dead. I was just delaying thinking about it, and I was getting scared and terrified and thinking, what if? So I just thought, just get in the stream and cross it. It's as simple as that.
The human body loses heat 25 times faster in cold water. One slip in the stream, and Ken could quickly freeze to death.
I was shivering uncontrollably, my body was shaking violently, and I was gasping for breath. I could feel it rising up my legs, and I just thought, how am I going to do this? I just thought, tough it out, take your jacket off. I threw it across the stream. I just thought, there you go, and now you've got to go and get it, or you'll be dead.
It takes him an hour to cross the stream.
Sat there for a few seconds, just shocked, trying to get my breath back. The stream, I just thought, that's it. It can't get any worse now. I must have done
it. Sheer grit and determination drive him onwards. But after crawling all day, he's barely covered a mile. Now facing another long night alone in this savage landscape, he's suddenly consumed by his greatest fear: being eaten alive by wild animals.
Transylvania is full of bears and wolves, and as the day was drawing to a close, I began to panic. I was so out in the open, still far away from the trees. I was scared, and I'd try and crawl as fast as I possibly could.
He makes it to cover, but the scent of his blood-soaked body and his weakened state makes him easy prey.
I was really hungry, cold, dehydrated. I think it affected me. I wasn't sure if I was hallucinating or hearing things. I really believed I was hearing packs of wolves surrounding me. I was convinced I could see eyes just looking at me. I'd just sit there panting, like breathing heavily, really scared, just waiting for them to attack me. I just thought, this is going to be horrible. Just being eaten's horrible, but to be eaten alive is just something else. When night came on that third day, the relief was like nothing else. I'd pulled through. It was such a big achievement.
Crippled by a broken leg and shattered pelvis, Ken desperately needs to reach the village 6 miles away, or face certain death in this hostile wilderness. After 2 punishing nights without food or sleep, it's a fight for survival, and nature is a formidable opponent.
It started to snow. And I know the sky seemed to close down above me, and just got this isolated feeling. A storm was coming, and then within a few minutes the snow was powering down. It seemed that the environment was just conspiring against me constantly. It felt pretty harsh and cruel, and you just become aware of how savage the mountains and the foothills can be.
It's been 48 hours since the avalanche nearly took Ken's life. Fighting his way through the snowstorm takes every last ounce of energy. And the cold, hunger, and dehydration are driving him to despair.
It's hard to keep moving because you think dying doesn't seem like such a bad proposition. At least all this pain's going to be over. You fall asleep and you can die. And I thought about my brothers and my sister. My mum as well. I'm close to my mum. Really close to my mum. I just got this idea and thought of someone coming round to my house and telling my mum and my brothers and sisters that I was dead. At this stage, I wasn't really sure why I was moving anymore. I thought to myself, this is what dying feels like then. So you're dying now. I was really lonely. I didn't want to die alone. So I just kept... I just kept moving and picking... Give us a minute, boys.
He's running on every last reserve just to stay alive, and now faces his 3rd night alone in the wilderness. He hasn't slept in 2 days, but in these sub-freezing conditions, sleep means certain death.
I wanted to keep moving. My body, it just decided it was gonna stop. I woke up the next morning and I just thought, oh, you're not dying. You're still here. And it's like my body wanted to stay alive. I'd come to a standstill the night before, and heavy snowfall had landed on me and totally cocooned my body. And I think it must have kept me alive and kept me warm. And I decided to start crawling again.
His shattered hip means every move is pure torture. Only his incredible fitness and superhuman reserves of willpower drive him on. In spite of the pain, he's confident the worst is over.
It'd be stupid to even conceive of it getting more difficult. I've just got to get to the track. It's not going to be far away. One big final effort today, and you know, I'll be safe.
At last, Ken is within reach of the road where the taxi dropped him off 3 days before. But suddenly, getting there looks impossible. A river blocks his path, and Ken knows just how deadly this might be.
When I saw that there was no passage through, I was really angry. I just realised I was getting back in the stream again. Except this time, yeah, it was gonna be hell. I remember when I was little, I used to go on the big diving board at the swimming pool, and I'd be so scared to jump. And here I was sat on the edge of a stream, and I was putting myself through that same suffering. So I thought, just get in the stream.
The ice-cold water could kill him in minutes. He needs to cross it quickly. But the far bank is too steep for Ken to haul himself out. Supporting himself by leaning on the bank, he's got to track along the river until he finds a suitable place to cross.
And I was moving inches and inches, and it was painfully slow. It was freezing cold.
For over an hour, Ken struggles along the river until the opposite bank is low enough for him to crawl out. But the current is strong and the water is deep. He'll either make it or die.
Throughout this ordeal, it was just such a vital mission not to get my jacket wet. And again, I knew if that got wet, I was dead.
His jacket and thermal top must come off. If they get soaked, he'll freeze on the other side. But by taking them off, he's increasing the risk of hypothermia, which could kill him.
I was left with no other choice. It was a matter of being patient and being careful, and I just had to get across.
With his severe injuries, Ken takes tiny hops on his good leg, letting the current carry his broken limb. One false move, and he could quickly freeze to death.
All of a sudden, I became aware of my boot becoming loose, and before I could react, my boot come off my foot.
His boot is swept away by the river, and the foot on his good leg is now exposed. He makes it to the bank, but with a 3-mile crawl through the snow ahead, frostbite is guaranteed.
And my first thought was, I'm gonna lose my foot. I'm gonna get frostbite. I just thought, oh God, what am I gonna do now? When you get to a point where you don't actually care anymore, you don't really miss your family, or you're not really bothered about them, you don't even care for yourself that much. There's something inside you, a survival instinct, and it'll keep you moving. The body will do what it has to do to survive. It's just an incredibly reliant and efficient machine. It's kind of amazing to realise that about the body.
Ken's never-say-die attitude finally pays off. He escapes the savage wilderness and reaches the road where the taxi left him 4 days earlier.
It came as a massive relief to finally reach the track, but I still knew I got a long way to go.
It's still 3 miles to the nearest village, and Ken's body is running on empty. He's fought through snow, hunger, and grueling pain. He's numbed by the cold, but he knows time is now running out. He needs to get help quick or die.
So I figured, why don't I try and stand and walk? It was okay for a few seconds, and then there was a big crunch, and I felt bones grating up my leg. Even though it caused me a lot of pain, and I just thought if I could find some sort of a stick to just take a part of the weight, then, you know, I could use it as a crutch. It was such a relief to be walking. It seemed like there was no more enemies or obstacles. I felt it was more or less home and dry.
But his ordeal is far from over.
And all of a sudden, it felt like I'd just been stabbed in the stomach with a knife. There'd been no pain like this. It was the worst pain I've ever felt, or the worst pain imaginable.
The stress of Ken's ordeal is causing his body to produce stomach acid at such lethal levels. It's perforating the lining of his gut. The acid flowing into his abdominal cavity is literally eating him from the inside. It's a ticking time bomb that could kill him within hours.
At this point, it was all about tonight. I had to make it back. There was no way I could make another night. While I was on this track, I wouldn't stop walking.
Every excruciating move is a step in the right direction. But the road ahead turns into his worst nightmare. The route splits, and only one way leads to the village. It's 50-50 he'll make it to help.
The track looked less well trodden, but something told me there was a house up there. And when I reached a clearing, I saw the outline of a building. I thought, this is it. It brought me enormous relief. I felt like I'd made it, and I was literally within steps of safety and warmth.
But his gamble has failed. The building is just an empty barn.
It was a crushing blow. I'd made this turn up the track, and it was a wrong decision, and I just thought, I hope this decision's not going to cost me my life.
Once more, Ken draws on his inner strength to drive him from death's door.
I didn't feel I was ready to die. I felt a bit of resentment towards the mountain. I wasn't going to let it beat me now, after all I'd been through.
But his body is approaching total collapse, and he's wasted precious time taking the wrong route. He must now retrace every harrowing step back to the fork in the road. It's getting dark, and temperatures are starting to plummet.
I reached a fork in the road again, and then I took my only other option, and I felt relieved again. I thought, well, there's only this way now. And eventually I turned a corner, and I saw a light spill through the trees. And it brought a smile to my face. I just thought, I've done it, and just realised what an honest, faithful servant your body is. And I just felt really proud of myself then. I knew I'd got a strong heart and character, and I could get through things. Fought for my life, and there was no sadness or bitterness towards the mountain or anything that happened. I'd made it back, and it was just so comforting to be with someone and realise that it all come to an end. I was safe.
Pioneering surgery repaired his hip and leg, but Ken lost 4 toes to frostbite. 2.5 years after the accident, he was finally able to walk again.
So few people get the opportunity to learn about themselves so intimately, and I feel privileged to have had to face such struggles to get where I am now, and I'd say that's a good thing.
Ken is now fighting fit and is hoping to one day compete in the challenging Tour de France.